61. Saturday, a near perfect day tomorrow. Mostly sunny skies. The high will be 75. The overnight low will be 52 degrees. And on Sunday, a mixture, sun and clouds with late day showers. The high will be 63 degrees. The overnight low will be 51. And that is the weather on this Friday. We used to say and have the habit of saying Happy Friday. Well, it is the end of the week if you're out there working, and particularly if you're one of the first responders or medical care people, if you're getting some time off. Well earned. Thank you very much. Let's get to our news. Welcome to the program once again. Let's take a look at the numbers. We'll start here in New York State. 343,000 cases so far, over 22,170 deaths. And of course, that is one third, or rather, a big chunk of the numbers in the country. And here in the U.S., it's almost a little more than a fourth of those numbers. 1.5 million in the U.S. have the virus, 87,000 have died. Worldwide, 4.5,302,000 have lost their lives. And here in Westchester, over 30,000 people have been diagnosed with the virus, and there have been almost 1,200 deaths. We have a lot more to talk about as we get rolling. But those are the numbers so far. Now, regarding Westchester, they're looking to maybe open some things. Yesterday, George Latimer once again gave his daily press conference, and he said the active cases here were under 3,000, hospitalizations were under 500, and there were 7 deaths on Wednesday. We don't know what they were overnight. He discussed, though, the 7 guidelines needed to open the county and said Westchester currently meets 5 of the 7 criteria. He also discussed what the businesses, when or what businesses will open during the different phases of the reopening process. So we went through a number of those things with you yesterday. We won't go through all of them again now. But things like restaurants are not going to open right away. You're going to see parks and those kinds of things, golf, maybe some, not necessarily swimming, but boating open up. And at the end of that are the larger groups, ball games, team sports, things like that. So we continue as we pass through now, 6:40. Many of you who live in New Rochelle have heard about this by word of mouth, but now it's come out to the news officially. A sad update on the family of the beloved New Rochelle restaurateur who died. The son of the late Jose Almazan has also passed away from the virus, according to a post on the GoFundMe page. Now, Jose, who was 79 years old, died last month, and it was learned that his son, Edward, over the weekend, he too, only 43, has passed away. Jose Almazan, the Amazons indeed, owned a little Mexican cafe in New Rochelle for the last 30 years. And it's kind of sad. It is one of those fixtures, almost, you might say, a landmark, or become a landmark here in New Rochelle. So, and I know a third relative was sick with the virus. We have no reports from that quarter. The job market continues to get hit hard by the coronavirus pandemic. United Airlines is facing class action lawsuits from non-union employees, claiming it forced them to take unpaid time off. Businesses love that. Uber is requiring that drivers and riders wear masks during their participation. Now we're up to over 33, almost 34 million unemployed here in the United States, and enough for us to think and understand why there's such difficult wrangling and heart-wrenching decisions are due over when to open, if open at all, despite the politics involved in that. Now, this story just released last night, and it comes out of the Northwell Health Study. The lungs, as you know, are ground zero for COVID-19, but new research shows the virus can also trigger kidney failure. Doctors and researchers from across the health network of Northwell in New York have found an alarming number of COVID 19 patients developing acute kidney injuries to the tune of one third of their hospitalized patients. Dr. Stephen Fishbane, part of the team of investigators at the Feinstein Institute, says about one third again have the problem. This means that the kidneys, which usually filter the blood, have a temporary, at least, period when they can't do it well. And in a significant number of patients, some 14% of those admitted to the hospital, they need dialysis to take over the job. Now, the fatality rate was high. Of the nearly 2,000 patients with kidney problems, nearly 100 lost their lives. So, not necessarily to that, but again, they have to work out better statistics for that. Now, one of the top stories this morning making the rounds everywhere is how the outbreak can impact the cost of food. You may have noticed if you've gone shopping, and many of us have had to, of course, unless you're getting it delivered. But even then, you may have noticed the bills are high. It seems like nothing's less than $5. Well, all over New Rochelle, Westchester County, New York City, New Jersey, Connecticut, prices are going up, and many for many reasons, not the least of which is the closing of meatpacking facilities. Now, some question has been raised about why meatpacking. Does it have anything to do with that? No, it's the nature of the work and the close proximity. Again, the density within which those people have to work, and the other issue is transportation, getting enough trucks on the road, getting enough people who work at the distribution centers. All of that is contributing to a lesser supply and higher prices. By the cost of some meats, we had people tell this to News 12, who gave us this story. Some meats, the price has gone up 200%, and they do believe it's going to get worse over the next 4 weeks. It is 6:44. Now, we're going to take a look. Should we go to break first? No, we're going to do this and then we'll go to break, even if a little late. We worked on a report last night. The New York, since let's face it, we're going to be reopening in different places across the country and the city, and all of us are going to have to set aside all of the caution that doctors would want. And again, they're not, contrary to what the president may have said, they're not trying to play all sides. They're doing what doctors do and being cautious and trying to avoid the worst. But the president and the governors have a responsibility to save the economy as well. So leaving out the rhetoric that's out there, in some way, shape, or form, openings have begun, some probably too quickly, others very measured. But sooner or later, folks, this is going to happen, and it's going to happen here starting today. So let's take a look at New York, and we'll take a few minutes to do that because that is where we live. We broadcast all over the planet, but we are a New York and tri state enterprise, obviously. Now, certain businesses across much of upstate will have the green light to reopen today after nearly 2 months of being forced to shut their doors amid the torrid spread of the virus. But much of the state, including the Buffalo area, New York City, and its suburbs, will have to remain shuttered, unable to meet the state's metrics to make it eligible. Governor Andrew Cuomo has laid out 7 key metrics, and we said we get to this a little earlier in this broadcast. Each region of the state must meet in order to qualify for a partial reopening on Friday, that is today, when eligible regions will be allowed. Now, here's how it rolls. Non-essential retail operations will be limited to curbside pickup, while essential, that is retail, including grocery stores, will continue operating as normal as they have throughout the state's stay-at-home order. One region, now why is one region of the state allowed to open when another nearby region isn't? Here's a look, and you'll understand as we go through the benchmarks. Let's look at the benchmarks first. Each region has to meet these. One, a decline in COVID hospitalizations, a sustained decline in total hospitalizations over a 14-day period. A region can also meet this benchmark if its 3-day average never jumps by more than 15 hospitalizations from one day to the next. Two, decline in hospital deaths. A sustained, once again, 14-day decline in total daily hospital deaths. A region can also meet the benchmark if the 3-day rolling average of daily new hospital deaths has never exceeded 5. 3, COVID hospitalizations, fewer than 2 new daily coronavirus hospitalizations for every 100,000 residents. Now, again, you can't be sitting down with a calculator and doing this, but one of the things that the governors and even the national, despite all the arguing going back and forth, it is important to give people some measurements that they can use to go forward and open things that mitigate risk. None of these things are going to be perfect, by the way, and people will lose their lives despite the best of intentions. So keep that in mind as we go through this. Number 4, hospital beds. And one of the concerns about still locking down is also if you have another rash of cases, if we do have a new wave, the issue always is that we'll have the bottleneck effect, which is to say that our hospitals can't handle the number of cases. Thus, hospital beds, at least 30% of a region's hospital beds must be available. 5, ICU beds, at least 30% of intensive care unit beds must be available. 6, testing must have had the capacity to conduct a daily average of 30 COVID diagnostic tests per 100,000 residents monthly. The number is calculated by a daily average over the prior week. And lastly, contact tracers must have at least 30 contact tracers who interviewed COVID 19 positive patients and determined who they had contact with per 100,000 residents, or a lower rate determined by the state based on the regional affection rate. As everyone knows, if you look at the numbers and even intuitively, the places, many places upstate that have lesser numbers of people, a lot of distance between homes and not congested downtowns, they do have a less number of cases. And where we've seen explosions of cases in those regions, it was usually due to a working plant, a factory with high density. Now, let's cover the capital region first. We're going to go over the several regions, and then again, we're going to delay going to break because I really want you to, so you don't have to go run and get coffee and run back or carry your computer or cell phone or radio with you. Counties. Let's talk about the capital region: Albany, Columbia, Greene, Saratoga, Schenectady, Rensselaer, Warren, and Washington. Their major cities are Troy, Schenectady, Saratoga Springs. Where is the region falling short? Though that region is the biggest obstacle has been the hospitalization rate. But the daily numbers have ticked up from May 10 and May 11 and May 12. That meant the capital region's 3-day average saw a net increase. So they haven't been able to move forward as they would have liked yet. In central New York, we're talking Cayuga, Cortland, Madison, Onondaga, and Oswego. Their metrics have been met and nothing is missing. So they're going to be able to go through phase 1 of the reopening process today. Finger Lakes region. Here again, 7 of 7. Now, the counties: Genesee, Livingston, Monroe, Ontario, Orleans, Seneca, Wayne, Wyoming, and Yates, they will be able to begin the first phase of reopening today. Now, they're looking at Long Island, Nassau, and Suffolk. Not so much. No surprise. Only 4 of 7 metrics met. As you know, New York City was hit harder than the rest of the state by the virus, so it's no surprise that the city's suburbs lag behind. They've had steady decreases in COVID-19 hospitalizations with 31 consecutive days of decline. That's good, but the number of daily deaths hasn't been as steady, and the rate of new hospitalizations also too high to reopen. Now, as of Thursday, 30% of hospital beds were available, just barely missing the mark. Mid Hudson, and as we get closer to where we are, or actually where we are, and we're included in Mid Hudson, Dutchess, Orange, Putnam, Rockland, Sullivan, Ulster, Westchester, major cities. That's us, folks: Yonkers, White Plains, Mount Vernon, Poughkeepsie, Middletown. We've met 5 of 7 metrics. What didn't we meet yet? The Mid Hudson region is a largely downstate region that was hit hard by the virus. As you know, the first cluster in the country was right here in New Rochelle. And much like Long Island, the region hasn't yet met the hospital death numbers. And as of Wednesday, the region had a new hospitalization rate of about 2.38 per every 100,000. It has to be under 2 for the first phase of reopening here, although we have had some of the parks and golf courses reopened. The region had also seen a 4-day decline in the number of hospitalizations, well off the required 14. Mohawk Valley, the counties Fulton, Herkimer, Montgomery, Oneida, Otsego, and Skohane, major cities Utica, Amsterdam, and Herkimer, they've met their numbers, 7 of 7. New York is obviously hard hit. Their boroughs, New York City, Manhattan, Bronx, Brooklyn, Staten Island, and Queens, 4 of 7. They've been hit harder than anywhere else. The city's new hospitalization rate was 2.54, well above the required 2. The share of open hospital beds, 27%, and ICU beds, 22%, and they remain below. Again, you have to have 30% of your hospital beds available for them to start reopening your city. And in the North Country, Clinton, Essex, Franklin, Hamilton, Jefferson, Lewis, and St. Lawrence. The major cities, Plattsburgh, Watertown, including the Adirondack Park, they've gone 7 and 7. You know what that means now. Same thing with the Southern Tier, Broome County, Chenango, Delaware, Schuyler, Steuben, Tioga, and Tompkins. They will begin opening today. And in Western New York, Allegheny, Cattarauga, Chautauqua, Erie, and Niagara. Major cities, Buffalo, Niagara, Jamestown, they're densely populated, particularly Buffalo, one of the largest cities in the state. They've only met 5 of 7. So that gives you a sense. So we're in the regions, for common sense is going to prevail in the regions where there are a few cases and where they've met those numbers, they will start to reopen. Now, they are going to have to do the sensible things. They're going to have to wear masks. They're going to have to practice social distancing. I mean, there still is a lot left to do here in New York. Now, out west, there are some people and some governors that are gotten probably a little ahead of themselves, at least by the thoughts of many doctors and medical professionals. And we also had the state where Wisconsin, where a judge overruled the stay-at-home order, and rather than people go carefully, there were pictures last night on the news, and I'm sure you saw them. And if you didn't, people just went right back to bars and packed them in. And let's hope, and all it takes is one, that they don't have happen to them what's happened in the meatpacking organizations where, or these other factories where one person's got it. It usually has led to half the people in that particular enterprise getting the virus. All righty, it is 6:55. We have a lot more news coming up. 6:55. Remember, today is Friday, May 15th, 2020, and it is actually a pretty nice day, but it's going to be warm and humid. It's 55 right now, and we are scheduled to get up to a whopping 81 degrees, okay? And we're looking forward to it, as I'm sure you are. But not all is peaches and cream. It's a little cloudy right now, and we'll have clouds throughout the day. But they tell us we have a chance of late-day thunderstorms as things cool off a little bit tonight. And they're even saying tonight, expect later tonight, scattered thunder showers, a temperature of 61. Tomorrow, a near perfect day, mostly sunny skies. The high will be 75 degrees. The overnight low will be 52. Sunday, mixed sun and clouds with late-day showers. The high will be 63. The overnight low will be 51. I'm not even going to think about Monday yet. And the weather, as always, is brought to you exclusively by United Hebrew of New Rochelle, one of America's best rehabilitation and senior care facilities, and it's right here in New Rochelle. Visit uhgc.org. And this bottom of the hour, and as we go into the top of the hour, is brought to you by Aging Issues Management, the law firm of Pena & Khan, pluginvirtualreality.com, and the Beachmont Tavern. Please remember, now that it is the weekend, especially for those of you who are working or on your old schedule, you know, it's Friday, tomorrow again, Saturday. You like to stay up late, watch a movie, play cards, board games, whatever you're doing as you're stuck in the house. And even if you're working and not stuck in the house, it's a night to relax. You don't want to cook, call the Beachmont Tavern, go pick something up. Or it's late. It's 11 o'clock. No one else is open. You'd like a nice hot burger with some onions, or you want a cheeseburger or some wings and fries. Or I still don't know how a tavern has fresh, crisp salads, but they do. It's one of the things I like there. Call them up. They'll deliver, but if you call them up also, they have a good situation where you walk in and the food is ready for you. Just pick it right up, pay for it, and you're on your way. Wear your mask, wear your gloves, be safe. And so we continue with the news, and we have a few national stories to share with you. And this is a nice opportunity with everything going on, with everything being so partisan. Someone who's thought to be very partisan, and indeed he has a role, quite frankly, to be fair, even though you may not always like it, or you may always like it. It's his job to be partisan. He's the leader of the Senate, Mitch McConnell. And this was refreshing. I don't even care who it involved, but it's refreshing, and it needs to be said. Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell conceded Thursday night that he was wrong. A politician admitting they were wrong. See, what I wish more people would get, and I'd like to think that other broadcasters are doing what I'm about to do now. Don't go say cynically, oh, they caught him in his lie. No, in this day and age, with the partisanship we have, if we don't send kudos and let it help the elected official, then the problem is a little bit us. So give some credit to Mitch McConnell here. He said I was wrong, and he had said that Obama did not leave a plan for a pandemic. And this is what Mitch McConnell said, and I quote him now: I was wrong. They did leave behind a plan. So I clearly made a mistake in that regard. McConnell said during an interview with Fox News' Brett Baier. The concession comes days after he falsely accused Obama, his administration, of failing to leave the Trump administration any kind of game plan for something like this virus pandemic during a Trump campaign online chat with Laura Trump, the president's daughter-in-law. They claim pandemics, this is what he said, they claim pandemics only happen once every 100 years, but what if that's no longer true? We want to be early, ready for the next one, because clearly the Obama administration did not leave to this administration any kind of game plan for something like this. And in reality, former President Trump, Obama's White House National Security Council left a detailed document on how to respond. Pardon me. The document, whose existence was publicly revealed by Politico in March, is called the Playbook for Early Response. And good for Mitch McConnell. We need more of that on both sides of the aisle. And my meter for that man just went up a whole bunch of points. And you may say, well, it was obvious. He was wrong. He was listening to the daughter of the president. I know. But you and I, folks, both know that no one, and I don't care what party they're in, they just don't admit errors. It would be just nice to see. Good for you, Mitch McConnell. All right. Everybody's wondering about the Flynn case, or at least people like a lot of our listeners who love the politics. Well, another person has entered the fray. Nearly 3 decades ago, John Gleeson made his name by successfully prosecuting the man known as the Teflon Don. Now he finds himself mixed up in a case tied to the modern-day inheritor of that nickname. On Wednesday, Gleeson became the latest participant in the turbulent criminal case against President Donald Trump's former National Security Advisor, Michael Flynn, after the federal judge overseeing the case appointed Gleeson to oppose the Justice Department's efforts to drop it. An esteemed former federal judge himself, Gleeson, 66, entered the discourse around the Flynn case Monday when he and 2 other former Justice Department officials wrote in the Washington Post that among the steps the U.S. District Judge Emmett Sullivan could take would be to appoint an independent attorney to act as a friend of the court, ensuing a full adversarial inquiry. Now, what does that mean? Now, according to, let's see, it really emotes to this. A branch's decision smack of impropriety. This is what he said, and he's talking about the FBI and particularly Barr. It also protects the judiciary itself from becoming a party to the corruption. Now, according to the order of the judge, Gleason will articulate an argument against the Department of Justice's effort to end the prosecution and will weigh whether Flynn should face a perjury charge for contradictory statements he has given the court. Former colleagues, contemporaries, friends of Gleason's, even some who have expressed sympathy for Flynn's position, said they expect Gleason's rigor, intellect, and experience to be a welcome counterweight to the tumult of the case. Hopefully, he will be, because that's what's required here, a fair arbiter. But I do believe I think I've quoted this guy often. So, and the way I quoted him, which I thought was appropriate, now I wonder about it, in the much better movie, not the Gotti movie made with the one that was probably made by the mob, which was terrible, but the one with Armand Asante, which was just done really well. And the prosecutor, after two failed attempts to convict uh, Mr. Gotti, there's a restaurant scene where he says, "I want to nail this guy." And one of the things that Trump supporters have been upset about, and with a good deal of justification, is the number of times that seems to have happened in the pursuit of things the president's, or at least his people, are alleged to have done. I don't know how to think about that. The waters seem to get muddier every day. But at any rate, in the Brooklyn prosecutor's office, Gleason served as the chief of organized crime and chief of the criminal division, during which time he became close with colleague Andrew Weissman, who would go on to become a top prosecutor in special counsel Robert Mueller's office. That needs to be noted as well. So we shall see how that works. But the overall point here, folks, is that this case is far from over. We have the Justice Department saying drop the charges. We have the judge saying, I wonder if there's perjury. And now that is the second person that is going to be involved with what they call amicus briefs and friend of the court. So the court needs a little help with this. We'll see how that works out. It ought to be interesting. I'm threw in a sports story with the national news because it's troubling. And for those of you who are football fans, put your seatbelt on. Police in South Florida are trying to find New York Giants cornerback DeAndre Baker and Seattle Seahawks cornerback Quinton Dunbar after multiple witnesses accused them of an armed robbery at a party. Geez, you guys make millions. Miramar police issued the arrest warrants for both men Thursday on 4 counts each of armed robbery with a firearm. Baker faces an additional 4 counts of aggravated assault with a firearm. The residential community is located between Fort Lauderdale and Miami. Now, Baker's 22, Dunbar 27. They were attending a cookout at the Miramar home Wednesday night when a fight broke out and Baker pulled out a handgun and more. So this has got to stop happening. No, it doesn't. Look at what I'm saying. Of course, it doesn't have to stop happening in football or, for that matter, any other sport. It seems that if you can catch a ball and run or hit a baseball, you can get away with an awful lot here. But it's just so common in football. You would seem so. And I'll never get my head around the Aaron Hernandez case. They knew this guy was a thug of thugs when they hired him. Hopefully they thought he'd change. But they did the right thing, ultimately. But then again, did the Patriots ever? Or at least did they ever play by the rules? Good football team, though. All right, back to more national news. The U.S. is upping military pressure on China amid increased tensions over the South China Sea and accusing Beijing of seeking to leverage the coronavirus pandemic to extend its sphere of influence in the region. Over the last few weeks, U.S. Navy ships and Air Force B-1 bombers have undertaken missions aimed at sending a very public message that the U.S. military intends to maintain a presence in the region. And one of the things the United States has been upset with China about is they've been taking advantage of the crisis and hoping to beef up some of their armaments and some of the islands, the synthetic islands that they've been building in the South China Sea. We're going to go to break again in just another moment and then come back with a little monologue. But another sports item that we took out, and just because we're going to be talking about it a little later with Jake Schaefer at 8 o'clock. If you're interested, we had talked about it several times on the show this week because of this rather popular series involving Michael Jordan. Two shows a week is going to be on Netflix as well, where we've never seen anyone in the press, at least that I talk with, no one's ever seen that a story over some 30 years could be produced over that time with such access to the object of the story. He, of course, being Michael Jordan. Anyway, this story, and I will talk about it later with Jake, and it's why you want to stay tuned when we get to 7 o'clock. We'll talk about it with Jake about the death and the murder of the death of James Jordan, Michael Jordan's father. And we'll be talking about that with Jake Schaefer at 8 o'clock. What we know. Now, before we do the weather again, I want to go over today's lineup. And today's lineup has a lot of stuff apropos to what's going on in the world. Well, we'll do our warm up with Vince. No, I got the wrong one. Where's my Friday? Did I drop it? Oh, well, I know anyway. We're warming up with Vince at 7:20, but at 7:35, we have a lawyer on who is going to talk to us about the problems of filing for unemployment, money that we need, and has very, very specific advice. So we will be glad to have him with us. At 7:50, we will talk with, no, I'm sorry, 8:20. Al Tarantino is at 8:20. We have Jake Schaefer at 8 o'clock, Al Tarantino at 8:20. And last night, in preparing for the show, we put aside a couple of stories, and we've been hinting about this, but we haven't spent enough time talking about the effect of this pandemic on children. And we have a group, a Westchester group that specializes in child psychology. They will be with us at 8:35, right to 8:15. And then at 9 o'clock, we switch gears and we go to a show whose time will be changing when we change our format next week. I'll talk about that in a little while during my little monologue. But we will talk with great, right? We will actually have a new program. It's the second of such programs, Politics in Your Health, starring Dr. Victor Sternberg. So let's take a look at the weather once again. Again, every 15 minutes, that's your curse. But remember, you may have been listening for some 35 minutes now, but there are people who just join us. And the weather is brought to you exclusively by United Hebrew of New Rochelle, voted one of America's best rehabilitation and senior care campuses. And it's right here in New Rochelle. Visit uhgc.org. It is 55 right now. It's cloudy. The good news is going to get up to 81. It's almost going to be, to the extent that 81 can bring it, muggy today. Mostly cloudy throughout. Chance of late day thunderstorms, though, but late day. And the temperature will drop down into the mid 60s, maybe 61. Scattered thunder showers tonight. Tomorrow, a near perfect day. Mostly sunny skies. The high will be 75 degrees. The overnight low will be 52, and on into Sunday. Mixed sun and clouds and late day showers. The high 63. All righty, let's get into a few things before we go to our first guest. And I've talked about it at different times, at different hours throughout the week. And we're even going to ask the lawyer when he comes on, Mr. Cuervos, at 7:35 about what people in my situation and others of you. But Radio Westchester will, this coming Monday, no longer be featuring a traditional morning show. We, quite frankly, and we've taken a little bit of time off here and there to do business, but no one has any money, and no one has any money to keep us floating, at least for now, because we have to pay bills too, not just for the radio station, but for our families. So we're going to take a sidestep. We're not going away. We're going to take a sidestep. We're going to do radio in later parts of the day, different radio shows. And I mentioned this yesterday. We've already got 5 on the boards. Politics in Your Health, Aging Issues Radio. We don't have a name for it yet. Anthony Galletta's show to come on about life as a young person and growing up in New Rochelle and Mount Vernon and Westchester, etc. We have Pod Hockey .com, which will be a national show on that sport, covering many, many different aspects. We've done a lot of pre-work on that. In fact, we put the finishing touches last night on the show that will deal with the Holocaust. And we've got another one about depression. We're going to keep choice. We're still going to have interviews with the George Latimers, and we're going to get the governor on. But these will be all long form or half hour minimum. Long form interviews done later in the day that we will, within due course, also run in the morning. But quite frankly, it is just because many people have asked me about it. I mean, we've tried to hold this off as long as we could. Many people have asked me about it. Um, what are you going to do? What are you going to do without money? But I'm not the only one, so I'm not going to cry in my beer about it. We've got people who started restaurants. We just started at a time that we could not have anticipated. So I'm going to do, in fact, when Anthony does his show about growing up in New Rochelle, I hope he talks about the ethics of we baby boomers who take a lot of hits. What am I going to do? I'm going to go out and earn some money to supplement it. And if I have to do something different, whatever I have to do, I'm going to do it. People do not have money, and I can't be asking money from people who do not have it. And we're asking banks to stay at bay. We're asking the government to stay at bay, and the people who buy airtime, who buy advertising, they need to be at bay. So it is what it is. But Radio Westchester exists. It will continue to exist. But I wrote a number of notes down last night. There are some things I'm not going to miss for a while because those of you who know me, I've done other shows. I do freelance radio. I've done some sports pre-games for another outlet called Westchester Talk Radio. I still do some stuff for them as a freelancer, not as much as I used to. And I'm going to enjoy doing some long form again. Long form radio is a little different. I did it when I first started at night. It's kind of like, if you will, what Charlie Rose does. Not the other stuff he does, mind you. That would make me very popular with it. But one of the things about morning radio that I am not going to miss, and many people will, because I love the 4 hour. Now this gets significant others and friends upset. But generally speaking, now there are exceptions when I do stuff with my grandson. Okay, tender moments, else otherwise. And my granddaughter. But other than that, the best 4 hours of my day are spent on the air. And morning radio, because of the pacing, you can, your house could be on fire and your significant other could be running around with 4 lovers, but you can't worry about it. You've got to just concentrate because every guest has something different. You have a lot of notes. You've done a lot of reading. I'm not going to miss that part of it. I'm going to miss just the engagement each and every morning because it starts my day and it clears my head going through the news. But the other thing, and this is on the light side, the other thing that I'm not going to miss that actually gets me crazy, and it is a sign of the times, and anyone out there who does radio who's listening to this or does news, it is an absolute, and I'm going to use a cuss word, hide the kids, folks. They've probably heard this, but it's absolute bitch to do your research on the web. And I want to criticize. Like it took me hours to do a part of the prep that should have taken 45 minutes because you find a story and then it jumps up and then a video pops in. And then these are news sites that I purchase. And then it moves up and then it moves down. And then they're giving you stories. If they're to the left, you get some left piece of dribble and propaganda, and it's to the right if it's another newspaper. And even the ones that try, and they do, the ones that try to be even-handed, the way the stories are presented, they're presented in a way to force you to buy something. So you're about to click on the story and something else jumps in there. Or you go and you click down and you start reading and then it jumps up again. Or because, and I'm criticizing the webmasters, I want to beat them with sticks and then rub acid into it. And if you're a webmaster, listen to me. If you create a website that is so tricky, so sophisticated, so much, because this is what they do. And when I was an executive, I used to criticize people about this. Don't create the perfect prototype for what you think it ought to be. We even a radio station, and I have really good internet connections. You could buy the best optimum connection they have, but if you give me 5 videos on a page, 3 ads, and your mother's cooking directions, you may think you're one cool nerd, but it's not usable. It makes me hate your business. And I'm just getting this off my chest. Give me an old newspaper or give me a website that keeps it simple and quick. I'm not going to miss that. I don't even miss. Why are you complaining about it? Because it's horrible. Try doing it. Curtis Lewa was talking about this the other day on his show on I guess it was WABC. I mean, he and I know each other pretty well, and I listen to him when I can. And about the same thing. Just he wants his Washington Post, his New York Times, his Daily News, his New York Post. And by the way, if you think you can get any better sports than the Post, you're crazy. But you got to read them all because you got to look at all sides, and then you can come to anyway. You can't do that on the web. They feed you stories the way they want you to read it. Now, some of them, now you may not agree with the editorial content of the Times, but at least they lift their stories. Their story presentation is simple. But again, you can't just jump to this or jump to that or get a feel for what the 4 top stories were. Or I'm getting it off. I'm not going to miss that. I'm not going to miss, because even if I do an hour with, I don't know, I'm going to make this up now. If I do an hour with, I don't know, Willie Mays just turned 89. If I were doing an hour with Willie Mays, I'm not going to read about Willie Mays. But if you're doing morning radio and you got 7 guests and 7 more tomorrow, that's 14 preps. It's not an economy of scale. It is a fun burden of scale. I love the work. Don't get me wrong, but you're up at 4:30 in the morning at some ungodly hour, and then you're not done prepping for the next show until sometime early in the afternoon. And then what you have, and I'm not complaining, by the way. I'm just letting you know the things I won't miss. Now that when you're doing it, you love it because you may be talking with the mayor. I may be talking with a source in Mount Vernon, or I may be talking with one of the guests during the week about something I read and what did they think. And I get lots of contributions from callers, some more than others. And so all that stuff's got to be read. And so what happens is it's 4 o'clock in the day, and then you got to pay bills and all the rest of it. And everybody else thinks you just got out of work early and you want to stab them with a penknife. But the truth is, though, net, I will miss this engagement. I will miss doing this every morning because, as John Harper, the man who taught me morning radio, and the people who helped train me over at WVOX will tell you, for morning host, it's like breathing. It's your whole day, but that is a downside too. Your whole day is predicated on it. When you go to bed, Sundays don't belong to you. Everybody else on Sundays watching their last football game, or they're putting a movie on, and you've got to read every paper that comes up. You got 2-3 days really worth of news to catch up on. You've got, and there's not a complaint. It's just to explain to you what the life is like. Your family wants to do something, and you got to watch the morning shows. You have to know what they all said to one another. You've got to read all the newspapers. You've got to watch 60 Minutes, and you've got to be sure all your guests are confirmed for the next day. And it's fun. It is a labor of love, but your day's shot. And when everyone else is putting on some movie on Sunday nights, you either got to go to bed early or pay the price. I will miss that. But I will miss the guests. But again, I expect to be calling all of them anyway, but having just different types of interviews with them later in certain days. I will miss the callers. And I will miss worrying about the issues. And I must tell you, and I would be disingenuous if I didn't say this, for good or ill. And I don't want to be judged on this because it's just about somebody telling you to have a bellyache. Don't tell me I ought to eat different food or whatever the case may be. But these last 3 years of covering Donald Trump, his presidency, and the reaction to his presidency have been very, very difficult. And I've talked to many people about it, other broadcasters, to not let it get to me, but it does. And I'm one of those people. And it would be so, I'm sure, now if the AOCs and the Bernie Sanders and the other extreme had won. The country's broken. And the country's so broken that politics comes before the people. Maybe it always has. I don't know, but like never before. And where I am critical of the president is anyone with a clear head knows it's got to come from his level. And it still can, this coordinating the virus. And I will grant him every single benefit of the doubt that it's a tough decision and he does need to reopen the economy and not just to get elected. But one still gets the feeling that he's thinking more about getting elected than he is about helping the country. And that's to me damnable. And the outright lies. I mean, maybe the Democrats are better at it because AOC says all crazy stuff. And the left does too. I can't deal with Nancy Pelosi even for 5 minutes. Okay. But I've come to believe that we have a system that, based on the way the primaries work, that America is broken and it's not fixable in its present state. And it's not to say, oh, I hate America. I mean, I still love this country. I love what it stands for, but I love what it stands for. We are no longer practicing what it stands for. It's like what George Washington said, be wary of parties, because the Democrats put everything but the kitchen sink into that bill because it'll get them votes. And I'm hopeful that someone will worry about everybody at the same time that they worry about the deficit. What I'm saying is, I don't know what to trust half the time. And but these 3 years, and the black is white, green is purple, the moon is made of green cheese, and the meanness. I mean, I was reading something the other day, 2 days ago, about, and it was a history thing. I was preparing for, I think, Harlan Ullman, and it was an interplay between Adolf Hitler and someone, and he called the Jews scum. And I said to myself, Jesus, that's what Donald Trump calls people all the time, and it's become totally acceptable. That shouldn't be. That's just the nit. There's so many things I can go on about. I'm not going to do a whole monologue today, but I just wanted to make you aware that we're not going away into the sunset. We just need to reorganize and accept the reality of this virus. I mean, I've relocated the studio 3 times. I've worked with people to raise money, and we have some things that are going to happen, but we just don't know when because of the virus. So, enough about that. Let's get on with the radio. Let's do this show, and let's see what the maniac from New Jersey has to say. Vince Russo, good morning.
Hey, good morning, Bob.
You sound good. I don't have any microphone problems today. I fixed the problem good.
That is a good thing.
Well, you heard me just moaning about show prep, and it's my biggest bugaboo. When people say to me, "You have a face for radio," although now when we stream so much, it's frightening for people. So I agree with that. That never insults me. The thing that gets me crazy is when someone says to me, "All you do is talk for 3 hours." I want to rip their head off.
Yeah, I know. That's always an issue. People have no idea what goes on in the background.
No, like I've
And I
been reading since
remember,
4 o'clock this morning because of some things
yeah,
that changed last night, and a couple of guests couldn't confirm till 11 last night.
yeah.
And that's again, it's
Well,
not
I
a.
remember
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
way back when Howard Stern was still on terrestrial radio, and I think he and his first wife were pretty much, on the outs, and she was moaning and groaning, and he would call her up in the morning, and she would say, "Look, I got to get the kids ready for school," and blah blah blah, and he would be, doing a bit, and she got mad at him one time and said, I do all the work around here. All you do is talk.
I know.
And and he just went ballistic.
Yeah.
And he said, "Okay, here's what we're going to do. Tomorrow, you come down to the station, and you just talk for a half hour, not 4 hours. You just talk for a half hour. Let me see you do it."
Well, he's right,
And
but I know.
there's a lot that goes into
Well,
it.
another thing he said, and when John Harper taught me radio, he's by the way, he's on every morning, and I don't care if you listen to him. He was my mentor. He's on a Christian station, Relevant Radio, a Catholic station, every day from 6 to 9, and a great teacher. But he was right. It's going on 20 years now. It's like breathing. I got to go earn some money and save this and do long form radio later on in the day now, but. I don't know if I can kind of live without it because it really is like breathing. My whole life's organized around it. My whole life. And by the way, apropos of what you just said, as much as you think it's a bit, your family never understands it or shtick. For example, a
Yeah.
beautiful woman walks in the studio and you make and I don't mean an overly sexual comment, but just something like, my mom, like Jackie Glee, how good you look tonight. Well, the Me Too movement might go after you, but it's all good natured. but your significant other is liable to kill you. I'm just saying, because they don't get that it's just shtick, chill. Or I'll say to someone, by the way, you were at Carnegie Hall, you were great. And then you get home. What were you doing at Carnegie Hall? Or sometimes I'm covering an event at a really cool event. Like I interviewed
Yeah.
the cardinal at the Waldorf Astoria. What were you doing at the Waldorf? It's my job. And how come you were on stage? I emceed an event. I get paid to do it. But this thing keeps me sane. I don't know what I'm going to do without doing mornings right now, but I know I have to do what I have to do. But
Yeah. Yeah.
it looks like we're starting to reopen a little bit. As I mentioned in my monologue, I am just disheartened that the president is now saying that he thinks testing is. How can you say testing's overrated if it's a benchmark? Can,
He has no clue what he's
I
talking
know, but he
about.
just shouldn't. But
It's
you,
pathetic.
but V. To be fair to him, he can be political, but he doesn't have to sound stupid.
I don't think he has a choice. I think he I don't know. I don't know what. Maybe he just like thinks these things up, or they just come out, or something. I mean, it
No, I
doesn't really
kind of know.
make
You
any
know what he
sense.
know? He look. You used to teach, and you taught some of the same classes I did. You wrote one that I used to teach about analyzing performance problems. He does it because it works. He does it because
Yeah, I guess.
that's why he does it. And
I
you know
guess.
what? I have to say it, and I know. And in fact, I got last night. It was maybe 3:30 in the morning. I was doing. I had to do. This is just one of those days. That's why the prep on my mind. It was an unusual amount of extra work. It's 3:30 in the morning, and I get an email from the Biden people want me to join their campaign. Boy, did I give them an earful. I said, I am getting ready to vote for a third party. I said, he has shown me nothing. I said, wake him up, shake him, give him drugs. He seems like he's not capable to do the job, or you guys aren't handling him very well. So no, I have not made a decision to vote for Tim. They emailed me, well, you're
Yeah.
going to vote for Trump? No. But at least Trump has a beating heart. What the hell is Biden doing? Or are the people right? Does he have a problem? Because it's similar to Donald Trump. He's wrong-headed in thinking that hiding is going to make his image better. It's making him look dead.
Well, I think what the problem is that people can't think outside of their constrained way of thinking about stuff. We're in an extraordinary situation here. And I think that the people around Biden are still thinking in the traditional stump campaign mode of getting out there, having rallies, and et cetera, et cetera. And they don't know what to do.
Well,
I think what he should be doing is at least once a day putting out policy papers,
make a
putting out
commercial.
statements
No,
about,
make a commercial where
yeah,
they actually see you're alive. I finally figured out. Remember, I was moaning yesterday about the way his hair was all pointy out, like that
mhm.
old man in a bed ready to die in about 10 minutes look. He looks like Yoda without the ears.
Yeah, so I think that that's the issue. I don't think that they know how to deal with this, and it doesn't seem like it's all that difficult. You get your man's
That's my
name out
point.
there. You have press conferences. You call into shows like yours. You put in policy statements that say, pick a topic. What'll I do if I'm elected? With the economy. What'll I do with
It's funny. If Trump didn't
pandemic
behave the way he
preparation?
behaved, I'd actually vote for him over Biden if he keeps acting like this. But it's just that I can't. I will not. That is a tone that's going to come out in my new format. I have just finally made my decision in my soul that while I understand certain things that Trump does, and I even feel for him in certain ways, I think that people have a patriotic duty if they really love this country not to vote for the man. And
Well, I think that I agree, and I've mentioned this before that this form of government, has got fundamental problems, and when you're faced with a choice between Hillary Clinton and Donald Trump, we're in trouble. There should be more
I think,
choices.
well,
There
see, we
should be
don't
more
agree here. I
candidates.
think this one is worse. See, Hillary, I thought was a competent woman. I thought she was a lying, disingenuous weasel, but I thought she was competent. Okay.
But why should you have to choose between that
No, no,
and
I
what we've got
understand. But
now.
but we have to be fair to one thing, and this is one thing I admire about Trump. I don't like how he did it, but everything he promised to do, he did. And that's very rare. I mean, he's pushing through with that wall no matter what. And you know what? And the people that don't like him, and I include me in this, we've got to remember, and even though he didn't have a majority in our system, he won the election, and people who voted him in wanted a wall, wanted less taxes, and he did it. It's just that he's concept of what a president can and should do, his veracity and the degree of it, because they all lie. Now the other one would have had me shooting myself was him and Nancy Pelosi. But Hillary, I thought was competent. And again, of all the people at that level I interviewed, she was the smartest. The nicest was Huckabee. The most fun was Huckabee. Well, Trump was fun too. When I talked with him, he gets it. He understands what you got to do in an interview. But it's I don't know. It drives me nuts. I think that I'm just getting crazy. I'm worried for the country. I really am. And this I can't tell you how much Biden has disappointed me. Maybe it's coming out in my voice, but
Yeah,
I mean
yeah.
really.
Uh,
And I don't care if
on a
you.
lighter
Yeah, I need a lighter note.
on a lighter note, did you read the story that a Giants cornerback and a
Yeah, yeah, I
Seattle
did it. I did
Seahawks
it before.
cornerback
Yeah. Do you
were
remember?
involved in an armed robbery?
Yeah, but do you remember when I first started doing radio? I used to instead of doing the football schedule, I did the parole list.
Yeah,
I could be very hard on basketball. I mean, it's a great sport, and people are going to think this is racial. It's so unfair because I'm just doing it by the numbers. They having a lot of white guys and black guys, but a lot of them get arrested, and it's just like really enough. And that's satire. That's what satire is about. It's not meant to injure. It's meant to poke at what's funny. Here we have millionaires who are thugs, guys.
right.
It's you know. By
and
the way, I'm going to
and
be
the
coining some other stuff when I come out. Can I give you my first when I reorganize?
sure.
Um, oh God, Miller. Stephen Miller is the Heydrich of America. Do you know who Heydrich was? He was Himmler's right hand man. He was in charge of the soul of xenophobia and the soul of anti-Semitism. Now, of course, it's lesser by degree. I don't think Miller wants anybody to die, but I think he doesn't want too many black people, and he certainly doesn't want any Mexicans in the country, no matter what. And he's kind of like
Yeah.
the Heydrich. I can't figure out what to do with the numbskull himself, the son-in-law, but I'm going to come up with something for him too. I am going to lampoon him until he can't see straight.
Hey, Ivanka seems to have fallen off the face of the earth.
Well, she got poor. Did you see the story I did today? And he deserved it. She got McConnell in trouble. McConnell actually did something. You really got to admire him. He admitted he was wrong. What he said about Obama. He was on with Ivanka, and he did. Obama really left us in a pinch. He didn't have a plan. Well, last night, McConnell had to come out and say, "Yo, sorry, he does have a plan." And
Yeah.
I can't remember the last time an elected official. I say at this point, give me McConnell for president. I mean, even the stuff he does that I don't like, he's doing what he's supposed to do. He's the head of his party. Yeah, McConnell, someone who did something principled. Then I'm unable to handle it.
Well, I don't. I question whether he did it out of principle. I
You
think
see,
he.
but I said people would say, I don't care. He did it. Could you see Nancy Pelosi admitting a mistake?
No.
Thank you.
No.
Or of all people, Donald, but he did. Oh, I got to get this guest on. I'm running real late because I love you. I'll talk to you later. Vince, we got to get to
Later
this
on, man.
guest, and I have to do a setup for this. This is really very important. Folks, we already in my monologue talked about I have to adapt to the coronavirus. And one of my issues, and this is a setup, but it involves me since I already did the monologue. And many people have applied for unemployment. 34 million now are unemployed in the United States. Sole proprietors like myself, and there are millions of us, by the way, who have not seen a penny of PPE because we're less than 500, we're less than 50. No emergency money, no PPE, and we're not eligible for unemployment. People are soon going to be going without money. Banks are offering forbearance. And now, guess what's at the end of it? When you call them up and say, okay, I'm going to start paying my mortgage, some of them are reneging. And they're saying, well, you got to pay the whole balance now, pal. And you want to get them by the throat and say, don't you think if I could have gotten the whole balance now, I would have kept paying you on time? You know, I've always wondered why these mass shootings never happen in a bank executive suite, really. But that's satire, by the way. All righty, my next guest, and this is a very interesting man. He's a lawyer, and he's concerned, and rightly so, that we are not doing enough about this. Where is my paperwork? I'm going nuts here. Throwing papers around. Anyway, let me get to him. He can tell you himself. Where is? Good morning, Miss Mercuros. How are you? Hello.
Hi, Bob. How are you?
Pretty well. What's the name of your practice? I dropped my paper on the floor.
Okay. Bob, my practice name is Carlos Cuevas, Esquire.
Yes.
I'm at 1250 Central Park Avenue, Yonkers, New York, and my telephone number is 914-964-7060. Thank you for having me on.
Oh no, you heard my setup, I'm sure. I'm very concerned about what's going on. Now, full disclosure, I have met Carlos. I was referred to him for some advice a while back, and he reached out and he talked about the problems with unemployment with me. And he said people really need advice on this. And that includes me, by the way, Carlos, but I'm not going to pay you for this one. What in God's name, counselor, what's going on? Talk to us about what we can do. And I've given you plenty of time.
Okay, we are in unprecedented times. We have never seen a pandemic as a nation or as a world. The last major pandemic like this was 1918. This pandemic is a health crisis that has paralyzed the economy. We've never seen a death toll of 80,000 American citizens. People are frightened. People don't know what to do. And one economic tool that's going to become very important is the bankruptcy code. The bankruptcy code can not only be utilized by major corporations such as airlines, and every major airline in the United States, with the exception of JetBlue, has filed for corporate bankruptcy.
But what about all this money that they got, Carlos? They've already gotten billions. Are they going to take the billions and file for bankruptcy? Do they get to do that? I'm talking on that level now.
On that level, well, think about it like this. If Neiman Marcus and J.C. Penney both have to file for bankruptcy, then which American company is really safe?
Nobody.
They're predicting that at least one major American airline will cease to function by the end of the summer. Because remember, Bob, no matter how much money you give the airlines, if the demand is not there for their services, then they're going to go through that money, and we'll just be going through vicious cycles of having to give them more subsidies.
Well, what about let's take it to the next level down. Okay, the bankruptcy laws, how do they apply to the man or woman or the group that has a 500-person company, a 10-person company, a grocery store, or a sole proprietor like myself or perhaps yourself?
Okay. Well, Bob, you're primarily talking about Chapter 11. And Chapter 11 not only applies to the major companies such as Neiman Marcus, but it also applies to an individual proprietor that has a large business, a large individual business. And recently, Congress adopted a subchapter for small businesses, and they recently heightened the debt ceiling to approximately $7.5 million.
What does
So
that
in
mean?
essence, well, if you have debt of less than $7.5 million,
Mm-hmm.
there's a special subchapter that is tailored for small businesses. And in addition, under the regular provisions of Chapter 11, small businesses can go through Chapter 11. And in the Southern District of New York and in the White Plains Division, there are two judges. One is Robert Drain, who is a nationally renowned bankruptcy judge, and the other judge is the Honorable Sean Lane, both of whom are superb judges.
Okay,
And
but what does that
to
mean?
show
What
you
does
the
that mean to
importance,
us? What does that mean to we business people?
what that means is that you're going to get experienced bankruptcy judges. You're going to get, in essence, people at the top of their games, that you will be treated fairly, that these judges know the law, and these judges are there to help businesses survive. Because the goal of a corporate reorganization is, in essence, to restructure obligations to make a business much more viable. And one of the things that people don't know, one of the most potent tools in a bankruptcy case is the rejection of unexpired contracts and unexpired leases. And that's something a state court cannot do under the Constitution. So, for example, if you're a business, and we'll use, for example, a restaurant, and you've leased a commercial premises that is very large, and now due to social distancing, you can no longer fill that place up to capacity.
Okay.
You'll never be able to pay your lease. But in a bankruptcy case, you can reject that lease.
Okay, but here's what I'm getting to. You're explaining it to me all in principle, and I need to understand it in a more practical way. Because here's the problem: people are going to keep losing money. At what time do they just close the doors and say, "I can't do it," and I got to declare bankruptcy? Because the real issue is cash flow. When do they make the decision to just stop? That practical issue. A guy, maybe he's got 3 people. He owns a Salamurti. He's got 3 or 4 people and a chef. And now he hasn't had any income for 6 or 8 or 10 weeks. He has to pay his rent. He can't pay it. He has to pay insurance. He can't pay it. He can't take any money home to his family. How is the bankruptcy law going to help him?
Well, the bankruptcy laws can help in this manner. In a Chapter 11, you have what's called the best interest of the creditors rule. And in essence, you can end up paying pennies on the dollar on your old debt.
Oh, okay, but when does but also you have to see what I'm also talking about here, counselors, because you've described the problem that all these businesses are having, and bankruptcy is going to be necessary to start, but the bleeding continues. We have the issue of attenuation. How do we stop? Like in my case, how I'm stopping is I'm going to change format and earn money another way, and avoid something like bankruptcy and then restart up. But someone with a bigger business than mine, bankruptcy, they still can't start until this crisis is over. So let's take, for our listeners, let's take the guy out there or gal that owns that business, that hairdresser shop. They've got no money coming in. So when they declare bankruptcy, can they restart again when the crisis is over? Can they cancel their lease? What can they do? What does bankruptcy do for them?
Well, Bob, it's a two-step process. In order to be in Chapter 11, you have to establish that you're economically viable, and that
was
will
my
entail
point.
for a lot of businesses re-envisioning their businesses, scaling down, or entering into new fields. And so instead of having, let's say, at a beauty salon, 5 chairs, maybe you have 2 chairs.
Okay. Now, is that the step to keep me viable?
Yes.
Okay, that's what I
Because
thought. Yeah,
remember,
okay, 'cause
Bob,
that's what I'm doing. Yeah, that's
because
exactly.
Bob, there's an issue called the limits of the law. That is, the law can only go so far. But remember, until there's a vaccine, we're going to be in COVID-19 purgatory. Until the state reopens, we're going to be in purgatory.
So,
So
okay, you're getting me there now. So, of course, there are certain risks they have, but when I'm trying to get people who are listening, who are in this quagmire, that's kind of like force majeure. There's some things you just can't do anything about. Uh,
yes,
okay, I get it. But in terms of a strategy, a guy or a gal, their hairdresser saloon is viable. They've got 2 chairs, but they can no longer pay their rent and don't know when they're going to be able to, or pay their people, or they only can pay those 2 hairdressers. Should
so Bob,
what do
you
they
have to
do?
look at your major cost, and then, for example, you renegotiate with your landlord.
And if he or she, okay, right. Well, that's due diligence for anyone. You work out payments. In the case of a sole proprietor, the biggest expense I have is other than equipment, is me, and rent is me, and insurance, and so you can reduce your pay, you can cut down on some of your insurance, you can use less equipment, you can have less hair dryers. But at the end of the day, where does bankruptcy come in? See, I'm trying to get the average listener to realize the benefit, and I want them to hear the benefit of doing it. What do they get out of it? We all know what big companies can do. They go bankrupt, and they get pennies on the dollar on their debt. They get certain leases they can get out of, and they can start over. What can Little
And that's
Johnny?
what you do, and that's you're basically doing the same thing for a small business on a micro level.
Okay.
You're trying to extend, for example, their debt payments over several years. That way they can afford to make those payments. You're trying to restructure the lease. That way the lease is more viable.
I want to just reset here. Carlos Cuevas is a bankruptcy attorney. He also handles other kinds of law, and we're talking about how bankruptcy can be used if you're having a small business that is in trouble. One of the things, and I just wanted to, this is on the periphery. A lot of the banks have offered, with the government's pushing them, forbearance. But I've gotten calls from people now telling me the bank said I had forbearance and they're going to work something out, but they're not necessarily going to put it at the back of my loan. Well, if the people they can't afford to pay this stuff off in one check. What do? Do they go hire a lawyer? Because you know what happens. Banks are formulaic now. No one's capable of making it's right out of Franz Kafka. No one's capable of making a decision that you'll meet at the bank. So how do you
Bob,
negotiate?
getting back to the bankruptcy court.
Yeah.
The bankruptcy court now, for the last 8 to 10 years, has had a magnificent program called loss mitigation. And that's where homeowners are able to restructure their mortgages.
Got it. Talk to us about that.
To make them more affordable. And in essence, what they do is they can restructure the length of the mortgage, the interest rate, to make the payments more affordable. And in addition, we haven't talked about Chapter 13.
Let's go there.
If you've fallen behind on your mortgage, as long as you can make your current mortgage payments, you're permitted to cure the arrears on your mortgage in 5 years or 60 months.
Mm-hmm.
So those are also viable options to enable and encourage a fundamental principle about American life, and that is home ownership, which is very important to stabilizing neighborhoods.
Do you think that with
And
looking at this crisis, Carlos, do you think a lot of people are going to be needing to do this in the months ahead? It would seem to me
yes,
that it's going to a large number of people. Now, do you think the government will back up the banks in doing this to some degree? There will be guarantees in some of these.
well, I look at Governor Cuomo using his bully pulpit and really encouraging the banks to work with homeowners. But if you have some recalcitrant banks, then I think in the bankruptcy courts, the judges get very involved in loss mitigation. And if necessary, will issue orders to compel compliance with the loss mitigation program. And if someone is denied, then a judge may ask the attorney for the bank the reasons why this person was denied. And if there is a viable case, 9 times out of 10, the person will be able to save his or her home in a bankruptcy case.
Now, let's take this out another 5-6 months if it goes that far. Little Johnny drives a truck and his company had to close for whatever reason because of this. He can't get a new job. He's now 5 months in arrears. He can't establish that he can pay the mortgage currently because he can't get a job and the government's not giving him any extra payments. He's, and that's where, and I know this isn't your specialty per se, but that's where we get into unemployment and everything else. Have you had people call you for help with that? Have they tried to get an attorney to help them get it?
No, but I do know from my travels that getting unemployment in New York can be very difficult. And the bureaucracy can be very cumbersome.
I see. We're talking with Carlos Cuevas. He is a bankruptcy attorney, but he deals with these kinds of financial affairs, the issues of mortgages. What do you see down the road? Now, we've talked about loss mitigation. We've talked about Chapter 11. We've talked about Chapter 13. Where do you see the circumstances and the numbers of people applying for either? And then, of course, we'll put the loss mitigation third for any of these solutions. How do you see a lot of
this?
this?
We also have to talk about Chapter 7.
Yeah. Okay.
The truck driver who has been unemployed for 5 months and probably has credit card debt. That type of person will most likely file for Chapter 7, and that will enable that person to get what is called a discharge of his or her debts and be able to obtain a fresh start. See, Bob, the real problem is we're in uncharted territory because until there's a vaccine, this economy really cannot go back to normal.
Well, they're going to try and push it. The president certainly wants people to get back to work. And I understand he goes too far, but with some of it for political reasons. But generally speaking, he's not wrong that if we don't get back to work at some point in time, the economy is going to be totally compromised.
No, I agree with that premise. But think about it like this. How many people that live in Westchester and commute into the city feel comfortable taking the New York City subway?
I know. That's not going to happen for a while, yeah.
How many people feel comfortable riding in an elevator with strangers? And remember, what enabled New York City to become the center of American capitalism was a fantastic mass transit system and the elevator, because that's how come you can have these skyscrapers. We're going to work differently, we're going to socialize differently, and we're going to eat differently. And that transition is going to cause major dislocations in the economy. And it's during this transition period that bankruptcy corporate reorganization law will help American society make that transition.
Well, people are going to need what you do, and this would be a good time. Now, we've talked about 7, 11, 13 loss mitigation. I know you can't tell us whether or not the government's going to give us more money or going through the or any further help really with getting unemployment other than to work through the system.
But Bob, you got to take a step back.
Yeah.
There was a senator from Illinois called Everett Dirksen.
I remember. The building's named
He
after him,
had
the Senate office building. Go ahead.
Yes, in Chicago, but he had a phrase, a billion here, a billion there. You're talking about real money eventually.
Yes.
How many trillions can this government afford?
I thoroughly understand. I thoroughly understand.
And the related question is how we are heavily taxed as a society. And especially given the changes in the tax laws that have really hurt Westchester residents, because there's a very stringent cap on state and local taxes.
Well, they threw that in. They baked that into this new $3 trillion request to do away with that. There's no way Trump's going to do that because, and I think they were foolish to put it in because politically the president's not going to sign it with that in there. But you're right. Even it's something a Republican senator said the other day, $3 trillion, the deficit's already as high as it is. All right. How can people get a hold of you if they need you? Give us that basics.
I'm at 914-964-7060. And I'm always glad to listen and see whether, bankruptcy is a viable option. But you see, I believe like a doctor that you should only operate when necessary.
Of course. See, I'm old-fashioned, as I was telling my people before. I'll do what I've always done. I'll go and do freelance for someone and go earn money some other way until things get better. But a lot of people are not going to want to go out and risk that, and I just don't know what they're going to do. And I realize that's not in your ballpark, but I just don't know what they're going to do. I'm worried about us.
But Bob, it gets back to what you said before. It's not only a legal issue, but it's also an economic issue.
Yes.
And what we're doing is we're going through a metamorphosis of the American economy. We're going into now a different transition period. And making the transition is going to be difficult. Because think about it from my perspective. Is it really safe for me right now to work in an office building with other people? I'm primarily working from home right now because of the COVID-19 crisis. So think about other businesses such as accounting firms, medical practices. We're all going through a transition together, and it's a very painful transition for everyone.
I'll certainly say, all right, give us your information. How can people get a hold of you? I want the basics for them, my friend.
Yeah, they can get a hold of me at 914-964-7060, or they could email me at cuevas576@AOL.com. That shows my age.
Oh, well, yeah, that's not fair. I'll tell you why, counselor. You know why I kept my AOL account? I'm going to tell you why I kept my AOL account. Because one of the things I think, and I fight with younger people about this all the time, every third day they're changing their email account, they're changing computers, they can't find anything. But everybody knows where to reach me. I don't change every 3 weeks. I get a new computer every 6 months so that I can't find my resume or I can't find this document. That's just me being a okay boomer. All right. Thank you very much, Carlos Cuevas. We'll be talking with you again down the road. Thank you, sir. Had a couple of glitches there. I did fix them though. Jake, where are you? I know you're on the line. And I know they've got a call coming in too. I won't be able to get to that right away. All righty. It's 8 o'clock. You're listening to Radio Westchester. And what is going on here? Ugh. Jake, are you there? Jake, for God's sakes. Well, can't get the guest. We have a caller. Good morning. You're on Radio Westchester.
Hey, Bobby, it's Anthony.
Hey,
How are
Anthony. How are you? What's going on?
Number one, I couldn't let what may be the last show in this format go by without calling up and thanking you.
For what?
Well, for providing this platform.
Yeah, well, I thank you for your contributions and always watching my back and even correcting me when I cross the lines. Well, in fact, well, thank you. I appreciate that. But more importantly, I'm looking forward to your show.
Well, I'm looking forward to putting it together. But there was one thing that you said this morning that I have to ask.
Oh, rattle my cage, please.
No, it's not about rattling. There are times that we get the sticks up, but it doesn't make a difference because we take our grandchildren and they can have soda. But in your case, your grandchildren can actually probably drink legally.
And he's going to be 18 in August. It's breaking my heart. All right, go ahead, my friend. What's going on?
You made a comment about people who will vote for Trump. Now, as of today, and this could change on a dime with him. You know that.
Yes, I do.
Okay, it could change on a dime. It could change by the end of the day. It could change after I hang up the phone with a tweet that comes out. Okay.
Of course.
As of right now, at this minute,
go ahead.
I see no alternative in voting for Biden. None whatsoever. Because while you criticize his campaign, maybe they can't promote him because he's not promotable in his current state. Now, I don't say that.
Let me just say, no, I know you don't. And let me just say this. I am suggesting that. And if that didn't come off, I'm beginning to believe, and not from the rhetoric, because everybody, we all, we say stuff, not me and you necessarily, but everybody says stuff because you want to get an edge in the election. But in my view, either he's got very dumb people or he has a problem.
This is a perfect storm for him.
Absolutely.
Because he can be taped, it can be edited, everything can be taken out if he flubs, and then presented. He can't do anything live. Let's be honest. And believe me, even if they're done virtually over the internet or Zoom or whatever, if he gets into a live debate with Trump, I think we all know who's going to look like they got egg on their face.
Oh, and he'll get clobbered.
Because he may come out with the most valiant point you could possibly make, and Trump will twist it, and he will start stuttering. He will lose his place. He will go to some free memorized statement that has nothing to do with the debate that's going on, and we've seen this over and over again. I'm not criticizing him from a well, I don't know how to put it, but I'm just saying this is what he's presented thus far, and his campaign is doing an absolute horrible job of promoting him.
I couldn't agree with you more, and I can't believe I was calling him Yoda, but I can't believe they let that picture get out, and it wasn't a picture of an enemy. No one was making fun of him. He looked like he was going to be.
But you know what?
years.
That's somebody's idea of showing his hardship in the situation. He can't get a haircut, but they don't understand how that looks. It's one thing to Cuomo came on, he got a haircut. It was evident. We don't know if it was done, with his daughter or if he got his own. I do my own haircuts.
Wait, whoa, whoa,
That's
whoa, whoa!
why my hair looks the way it does.
Yeah,
Explains a lot.
yeah,
You
but
know what I mean?
you're not very busy doing it.
No, absolutely. It takes me about 37 seconds.
My
And
daughter.
that's if I'm doing it left-handed, But hey, listen, if we can't make fun of ourselves, we can't poke at anybody
Oh,
else, right?
I always do. You know what? One of the things you've heard me say over the years, and again, please, I'm not going away, is whenever I say I got to remind myself that I find myself being a hypocrite way more often than I'd like. But we're all human that way. Yeah, no, I know
Absolutely.
you're right, and you know what? And you probably were shocked when I said, because right now I'm not disposed to vote for the president, but I can't see me right now voting for Biden. And when they sent me that thing last night, it was 3:30 in the morning. I was like a crazy person. They must have been shocked.
Yeah, but I don't understand the mentality, and this is actually targeting you when you
But
say
no,
you
go
vote
ahead,
for a
please. No,
third
go ahead.
party, but you're wasting your vote.
I know,
You're wasting your vote.
I know.
You might as well stay home and not vote.
No, I know that, and
Don't take a chance going to a crowd and getting corona.
no, no, I know, but you know what? Even after I said that, I'm saying, would you really actually vote for a third party? I am just so disappointed, and I'm going to tell you something. If Biden runs with Kamala Harris, and I realize she's a senator, she's accomplished many things, she cannot get voted in because everybody knows that whoever the vice presidential person is going to be the next president. And God bless, if Biden is okay and he gets elected, but he's not going to make a second term.
I'm going to take it one step further. As I said, as a right now Trump supporter, okay?
Yeah.
If he runs with Kamala Harris, just think about the ads that Trump will run when Kamala Harris beat the doo-doo out of him in the debate.
I don't even want to imagine.
About being that little girl in the second grade.
No, stop.
Out in California,
I know what
who
he's
was in
going to
the
do.
second
Stop.
class of your. Just think about that.
Hey, you know what? I went there this morning and I even baited Vince a little bit, but I meant it. I'm so hungry for a politician to do something sincerely. I was so proud of Mitch McConnell today. Let me ask you this, because we're on a lot of stuff locally. We're mostly on the same side completely, but we have our differences. But don't you hunger for anyone on either side to just say, you know what, I effed up. Why won't they do it? What is wrong with them? Mitch McConnell is my hero today.
That's calculated too. And now,
I know.
again,
No, I know that. No, I know that.
I'm on the right center. Right up center, I should say.
No,
that's all calculated too.
No,
There's
I know
nobody
it
that
is.
does it out of their heart.
I know it is,
backed
but
into a quarter.
Yes, but didn't it sound? But don't they realize? And maybe it's just me because I'm a mush, and I know you are too deep down. I out you all the time. But Anthony, don't people realize that? And here I am, a guy that's thrown him under the bus for some of his positions, but that's his job. But man, to have him do that was just so refreshing. Anyway,
well, don't you? I mean, you've said it many times about the president, but this goes for every politician.
I know.
They do what works.
They really do.
What gets them reelected, what keeps them at the trough, feeding at the public trough, the pigs at the trough. That's exactly what they are. That's why I believe in term limits.
Well, you've been saying that for years, and I never did, but I'm beginning to now. Well, you know what, though? You wake up. There were people like yourself, and I don't name politicians who I talk to off the record, but you know the one I'm talking about. I have been enlightened by a local Republican extremely well. And I didn't realize all the grants that go out there. I didn't realize that, some of these nursing homes are just feeding troughs for the left. And it's just horrible. And by the way,
it's a cash cow.
But did Bob Cox, or did he not, hit it out of the park? And I'm not happy that a man didn't take his job and everything, but what was the school board doing trying to run that guy by everybody? What were they thinking?
Bob, this is the problem with our society, and this is what brought Donald Trump to the presidency.
I do know
it's
that.
Only about ideology. That's the bottom line here. It has nothing to do with what's right or wrong. And you talked about the show that I'm going to put together, and there was a comment about our values, I
yes,
believe.
That's why I'm looking. Yes, it was. In
effect.
other words, like, I'm not going to cry over spilt milk. The virus happened. I'm going to go out and earn some money and save my enterprise. That's how we were brought up.
What have I been telling you from the first day we ever met on going back to VOX? Personal responsibility.
Yes.
That is the core value that is missing from society today.
I
When
remember.
people fail today, when they get a setback, they turn right away to a social program, a government program to bail them out. And it's when they and what happens is they become so satisfied and they realize that they can make just a little bit more, or in some cases less than what they're receiving for doing nothing,
I know. Well, you said
and they just feed on society's teeth.
I have a good memory, and it must have been 15 years ago. And when I first got to know you a little bit, and you used an old axe that I still remember, and it's really very true. And I think you got it from Abe Lincoln. You know, when someone's hungry, of course, right now you get them a fish, but you go a lot
Yeah.
further if you teach them how to fish than just keep giving them fish. And it's very true. And
Well, that's the bottom
yeah,
line.
yeah.
Everybody, listen. I'm not saying we shouldn't throw people a life preserver if they're underwater. Okay, no doubt about it. That's what we have all the social programs for. But once they're saved, once there's no danger of them drowning, that's when you have to teach them to fish, so they no longer
Well, you know,
have
that
to rely on a preserver.
that's one of the kicks I've been on, and I know people keep correcting me on it. We have to take care of kids that, and you've probably tired of hearing me say it, and every other listener, but I am appalled that so many kids are going to school hungry. And I'm not talking about the parents who have two jobs and can't be home to cook. I'm talking about people who are getting enough assistance to feed their kids, but through some failure that's correctable, they don't. But we don't intervene. We just let it go
But
and feed the kids.
but Bob, you're straying a little bit away from my mother. My father died when I was young. My
Yes.
mother worked, so there was nobody in the house.
No, I know. I had the
Nobody.
same thing.
But we ate.
But they
We
made
ate.
sandwiches and they gave it to me to go to school with.
Listen, to this day, I still like peanut butter and jelly
Well, no,
on rye or whatever's available.
Well, and look, it's not that I'm not one of these crazy people that says if you know the kids got to eat. But what bothers me is if we keep doing that. Number one, we in the richest society in the world, people shouldn't be going to bed hungry. But I'm going to get a little more direct here. But if the
Yeah, but
reason
Bob,
the kids
wait. Just give me 1 second.
Sure.
You're mixing kids that may be in poverty, and maybe the meal is not available to
right,
them.
and I'm not saying they shouldn't get
Whereas
it.
there are many on the program where it's just an inconvenience for the parents.
Yeah, that's
to
my
make that
point.
breakfast and get out the door.
Or if I may, if we know that the parents are drug addicts or they just don't want to, you know, and there's a problem in the home, Child Protection Services should be saying, how come your kid don't eat? Now,
Yeah, you know what? What's the lesser of the evils there? Child Protection Services or the parents?
my point is, it's the parents.
That's the problem.
Yeah,
That's the problem.
and any organization I've ever
There's
joined.
no real alternative that protects those kids in that situation.
No, I know.
When I say real,
No, I
I'm
mean
talking
practical.
about in a healthy environment.
You're talking about practical, because what I'm concerned about with that, and again, I love that we have the programs, but one of the things that the virus has awakened in me is that we had people willing to keep schools open and risk people getting the coronavirus just so kids could eat. And it's in a perfect world, and I realize I'm being Pollyannish. We would go to the parents and say, "What's the problem?" We both start work at 5 a.m. I only get 2 hours. Yeah, I get it. I mean, we got to feed this kid. But then we get the other one. Well, you know, I don't work, but I bought beer last night. And I know that's stereotypical, and I'm trying to make a point that,
I know too many people, Bob, down in Rochelle, who were on those lines to get a free 12-pound turkey who could well afford a 20-pound turkey.
No, but there are people that can't afford it. But see, here's what I'm getting at. If someone, because poverty's horrible, and we should be ashamed of ourselves that we have working people in poverty, and that's probably the larger issue. But I'm very interested in wanting to know what would happen if we said, okay, you're down on your luck, you're getting assistance, but your kid is not enough to feed your kid. Here's another. I'm making this up now. I don't know what the numbers are. Here's another $30 a week in food stamps. Now, if the kid doesn't eat after that, if you solve the problem, see, I'm interested in society doing something about that, because so what do? The kid eats now when he's in school. What's going to happen when he goes to high school? And anyway.
And who's to say that that extra 30 is guaranteeing the kid eating?
Well, that's my
You're now
point.
going to the local grocery store, and the grocer who would rather make a sale of beer than make no sale, because they're not supposed to putting beer on that ABVT card. Okay, just marks it up as something else.
Oh well, we can't solve the planet today, but
It's
I
a vicious
try.
circle. It's a vicious
Yeah.
circle.
Well,
It
I'm
really
glad
is.
they feed them. I really am. And so my point is that we shouldn't have the program. But I guess what my beef is, and maybe it's the way I grew up, but we need to hold parents a little more accountable. That's just my point.
Personal responsibility, Bob. That's my number one issue.
Well, speaking of, before we go, how are you? I'm going to have a psychologist on in about after Al Tarantino, and they're going to be talking about how this has to be affecting kids. I'm worried about kids. You remember you and I
100%.
grew up during the Cuban Missile Crisis. I was scared. I almost shoot my pants. What
Let me
is?
tell you how scary this situation is and how little we actually know about it.
Go ahead.
Okay. You and I both know of a 91-year-old nursing home patient
Yes.
who was first denied a test for corona after being quarantined for symptoms, then tested positive. So was put into isolation for the required 14 days. Well, would you believe that after 17 days, still test positive, and nobody knows what the protocol is?
Oh my God. Ah, it's so scary. It really is. And I'm one of these people who wants to get back to work. Well, I've been working. And then people say, but you're 70, be careful. I toggle back and forth between saying, well, I got to live my life on one hand, and on the other hand, well, I don't want to cast my chips in before my time either. It's an interesting conundrum, to say the least. Hey, listen, thanks
Yeah,
very
yeah.
much. Thanks for the call.
Good
And
luck in whatever future ventures, and hope to
well,
see you back in this format at some
well,
point.
in this format, yes, is in the future, but I'm still going to be doing other shows, and I'm going to do
No,
them
I understand.
later
I
in the
fully
day, and we'll
understand.
run them in the
Just
morning. So
just try to publicize them a little bit, better.
no, we are, and that's one of the things I just haven't had the time to do for all the obvious reasons. All
All
right,
right,
listen, thank you very
you got it,
much.
brother. Good
Kiss the
luck.
grandkids. Bye bye. Thank you very much. All righty, out, Tarrant. I got to apologize to my man Jake, who I didn't double confirm, but he tried to call in when he saw me calling him. So I screwed that up. Jakey, sorry about that. But he's going to be doing, Jake is going to be involved in to a great extent. In fact, Jake, I haven't even told him this yet, but with Steve Callis, myself, and others, Jake's going to be doing some long form stuff in the new format. So he's earned his wings. Very interesting guy. All right. Let's look at what? What do I want to look at? Oh, am I weary? Yeah, I was up at 3 o'clock. All right. 57 degrees, going 81. I should sing the weather one of these days. Do you know that? I forgot to put my weather sounder on. It's the weather. It is Friday, May 15th, 2020. I'm Bob Marrone. You're listening to Mornings with Bob Marrone on Radio Westchester. And the weather is brought to you exclusively by United Hebrew of New Rochelle, voted one of America's best rehabilitation and senior care campuses. And it's right here in New Rochelle. Visit uhgc.org. It's not a perfect day in the neighborhood, but it's a nice day in the neighborhood. It's going to be warm today. It's 55 now, getting up to 81. It's cloudy. Tonight, though, we have a chance, by the way, as the day ages on with the cloudy weather, we could have a thunderstorm in the early to mid evening, but certainly there will be, they're calling them scattered thunder showers later tonight. Temperature dropping down to 61, but all that moves away. Tomorrow is your day. Notice there's poetry in that. So tomorrow, mostly sunny skies. The high will be 75 degrees. The overnight low will be 52. Sunday, mixed sun and clouds with late day showers. The high will be 63. The overnight low will be 51. And as we get ready for Al Tarantino, we are supported by our friends at United Hebrew of New Rochelle, one of America's best rehab and senior care facilities, aging issues management, the law firm of Pena and Khan, pluginvirtualreality.com, and the Beachmont Tavern. I remind you, and again, Friday, I could see it tonight. You're there, you're watching The Godfather. You haven't watched it yet because you've been saving it. You're home, you're not working, or you have been working, and now it's Saturday night. You want to put on a good movie. Oh, you forgot to order a pizza because they all call close, unless you call one of the Domino's types, which are actually pretty good, but they're different. It's not like getting a big pizza made at a pizza joint. And so you want fries, you want burgers. Maybe you forgot to order some beer or wine or whatever, and get it there. And you can also, to 1 o'clock in the morning, get food, fries, salads, burgers, chicken wings, the boneless chickens. I always wonder how they walked. At any rate, you can do all that at the Beachmont Tavern. And as we get ready for Al Tarantino, unless he forgot, it's interesting, and I've done it. You've probably noticed it even in the last few days. Our minds are turning to mush without the usual regimentation of going here and going to there. And we've gotten people forget to call, sleep through calls, so we wind up calling them. But I think we'll hear from Mr. Tarantino in about 60 seconds. So I'll share another little thing with you in local radio. Or when you have certain regular guests. Some regular guests actually call late or early habitually. In other words, you know that the phone's going to ring 2 minutes to their appointed time that you've given them, or 4 minutes later, and you can actually talk around. It's kind of interesting to observe the behaviors of people. All right, let's get ready for Al Tarantino. Where is he? Oh, I don't like that sound. I don't like that sound. Did I hit another wrong button? Let's see. Oh, no, it's fine. All righty. You should see the setup I have here. It's very, very interesting. It is, but where is Al Tarantino? I bet you sent me a text. Jake, let me know I don't mind sleeping in. Oh, that was Jake. It was my mistake. Jakey, all right. He doesn't know that he's earned his stripes. Oh, there he 845. I don't know. This could be my guest early, which I wouldn't mind that. Good. Hold on. Hit the button, Robert. Good morning. You're on Radio Westchester.
Hi, good morning. This is Todd Carlin from Astor.
Todd, okay. Welcome to the program. You called. Let me see my schedule. You called early, but I'm going to take it because my regular guest is not here. Now, Todd, are you being joined by someone else, or is it just you today?
I think it's just me today.
Well, that's good. That's pretty good. Give us your full name and your title at Astor.
Sure. It's Dr. Todd Carlin, and I'm the Assistant Executive Director of Clinical Services.
Okay. Now, tell us about what you do. Now, I've already earlier today, and I'm going to do a reset now, so I hope you'll bear with me, but I had to pick it up because I was looking for another call, and I got to you early, and early is good, believe me, because of what you do. I was just talking with a caller worried about his children. I yanked a story out of the press today, and doing my midnight prep, about how psychologists now are really getting worried about how this COVID crisis is affecting children. And I'll give you a little, and I told people you were coming on, doctor, and I'll just say, here I am, a guy of 70, and I look back on the Cuban Missile Crisis. Now, you're much younger than me, so be easy with me. The Cuban Missile Crisis gave me enough anxiety to last 6 months. I lived through a period when we were because we thought we were going to have a nuclear war and all die, and even my mother thought we were. When we went through the Cold War, we hid under our desks. When Vietnam came and we were like 16 or 15, we wondered if we were going to go to war and die. And we had attacks of the mumps, and we had the chicken pox, and we'd all be home, and everybody worried about getting sick. But nothing like this ever happened to myself or to me or people of our generation. And I'm trying now. People live through war, but again, modern America's never really been bombed. Just the one time in World Trade Center. We've never, we never lived through anything like this. And when I had the opportunity to have you on, and you'll tell people what your organization does, I could not pass it up because I am really worried about the notion of you can't go out, you have to wear a mask, you could get sick and die. I mean, when I was a kid, I was worried about I got the mumps. I thought I was going to die any day. So that's the setup here. We need what you do, what your organization does. Tell us what it does, and then we'll get into specifics. And I hope I've sort of set a stage for you.
No, you did wonderfully, and I'm glad, and we'll get back to it. I'm glad you brought up some of the other traumas historically and in comparison, because I think that's so important. I think there are certain things about COVID that are certainly unique and have created this this unprecedented atmosphere that you just described. But I'll tell you a little bit about Astor. We have an array of clinical services and also prevention, educational, and residential services in both Bronx and the Hudson Valley. That includes outpatient clinics that are standalone and embedded in schools. We have care management. We have embedded education programs, day treatment, and we touch over 50 schools throughout the Bronx. and an assortment of prevention and crisis-driven services as well. And in the Hudson Valley, we have residential and crisis-driven services, literally helping people when they're, when they're at, like you said, kind of the end of their rope and they really need assistance. And it's been a really quick transformation for us to actually go from what was, essentially, business as usual, being, in our offices, to in a matter of days, really being a completely remote telehealth organization. And we established a hotline, which was 866-ASTER-01
We're going to
for a
ask,
couple of reasons.
and Doctor, we're going to ask you to give that again later. Now, I know we were going
Yeah.
to talk about children today, but you do more for people, not just children, if I understand it right.
Well,
Or is it only
honestly,
children?
when you're talking about working with kids, you're talking about working with families.
Okay,
And
got it.
you
got
can't
it.
do one without the other.
Got it. Go ahead. I'm
And
sorry I
although-
interrupted you.
No, absolutely. And when you're so like the focus of the individuals we work with is all the way from 0 to 26. But that being said, we're working with parents. We're helping them assist because we know that they have to be grounded themselves, and they have to be able to take care of themselves, and if they're going to be able to effectively take care of their kids. So it has to be that comprehensive approach, and like you said, it winds up being so much more.
So let's get now down to cases. First, why don't we talk about each of the services that you provide? People are listening and they've got children at home. What should they be
Sure.
looking for? I know you have the services in schools. Let's take it pre coronavirus and then after this has happened. Typically, what kinds of issues are you dealing with, and what part of your services would be amenable to that?
That's a great question. I mean, under normal circumstances, we're dealing with everything from, some delays that kids are having early in school that might be causing other social emotional difficulties. We deal with, kids who are having troubles adjusting, all the way more to significant, anxiety and depression and other mental health challenges that kids would have and normally do encounter from time to time, as they go all the way from elementary through high school and into college. Some of those linkages happen through our standalone clinics, which again normally sees kids, weekly. We found though that really what is most important is having a flexible model and really being in the community so that we can deliver services where kids and families are at. And that's why we're in so many schools. The great thing about working in schools is that a lot of things that bring kids into, and where parents realize that kids are struggling, is when they're getting calls from teachers or hearing that there are academic struggles.
Mm-hmm.
So we're in a lot of schools being able to deliver services there, being able to coordinate with teachers and with school support teams. And actually push into classrooms in many situations to help the kids right where the issues are, whether it be in socialization, anxiety, or any other kinds of disruptive issues. And then we're also in the community. We're going and we're meeting the families where they need us.
That's
and in their
wonderful.
homes. We can, yeah.
Now, what about if someone, we talked about some of the early learning issues, but sometimes they cross the line over into true learning disabilities and/or even being on the spectrum. Is that in your wheelhouse, or do you refer them elsewhere? Because schools have programs, special needs programs. Is that out of your
And
ballpark?
Not entirely, no, because I think that we know that there are a lot of kids who have, those learning difficulties. We know that learning difficulties sometimes happen unique and by themselves, and in which
Yes.
case we want to make sure that their kids are getting the educational, support that they can. But we also know that learning difficulties come with a lot of social emotional challenges. It's frustrating to be struggling in school.
I
It's
know.
frustrating to think that you're the kid that isn't able to make progress. And often some of the behavioral and other emotional issues that come about from first academic struggles.
Yeah,
So a
absolutely.
lot of
Hey, I'm 70 and I get like I have issues because I can't cope with my computers. I'm not kidding. Like with a cell phone, you ought to start doing stuff for those of us who baby boomers who didn't grow up with cell phones, because I get as frustrated as I used to when I was a kid. We're talking with Dr. Todd Carlin from now. Astrid, your organization, doctor, is Is it insurance based? Is it a nonprofit? Are you funded through grants from the government? How does it work? How do people use you that way?
We are a nonprofit, but we get funding from a lot of different
Good.
places,
Okay.
including some grants and other things. We do take just about every insurance, but we work with people also on sliding scale. And we try to be as inclusive as
I
possible. So
can't
if
tell
there's a
you.
need, we
I can't tell you how important that is. I'm on the board of Choice. You may know them. They deal mostly with the homeless and addiction.
hmm
And they work, of course, off government grants and Medicaid grants. But the issue of helping people with mental health has become so expensive. For example, at Choice, if someone's even in crisis, they may have to wait, unless they're suicidal or have suicidal ideation, they may have to wait 6 weeks to see a psychiatrist. So
And,
it's
and I'll tell you, one of the things both before and that's going on right now is that we have open access in our
wonderful,
clinics, and that
wonderful.
means that if you call and reach us, we can generally get you scheduled the same day or at latest the next day for our first intake appointment. And that allows people to make sure that people can at least in the first session come in and talk about, this is what's really bothering me. These are really what my concerns are for my kids and my family. And we can do some basic safety planning and assessment and get people on the road where they need to be. That's something we committed to several years ago, and something we've still been able to do in this transition to, during the COVID crisis.
Well, and we'll talk more about COVID in a moment. You know what I'm also concerned of it again, as a family man, and I have grandchildren with whom I'm very close. Teenagers seem, at least from my layman's perch, seem to be having a greater difficulty, or maybe it's always been thus, but with anxiety and depression, particularly because of the comparisons they make with cell phone and internet. Is my
hmm
observation on the money? Are they struggling more than maybe kids have before?
Well, I think there are some signs that we know that the suicide rate has gone up over recent years. And you brought up social media, and we don't have one particular reason of why that is. But I think that, the social isolation that can certainly result, and living, they live more and more developed lives that are kind of separate from what people, and you said other generations may be able to recognize and relate to. And I think that's why, checking in and making sure that, we kind of know where people are at. And it's very easy right now, especially even though you hear stories now, it's like people are living together. Everybody's home, but people can also be in separate rooms and on their
Oh,
devices
yeah.
for
Oh,
hours at a time.
that's
So it's
absolutely true.
really,
Well, let me go. I
yeah.
just
And
want to
so
take
it's
a step back because I got plenty of time for you because I
sure.
knew how important this was. So you're in the schools. Where else? In other words,
Yep.
if I were breaking down your divisions or your departments, and I don't know if it's client focused or service focused, explain again the construction because then we'll apply it because we're going to have parents out there or children from the ages that you mentioned, from 5 to 26, if you will. How are
Right.
you constructed?
So I'll focus first on the Bronx. We have two standalone clinics. One is
Wonderful.
located at 750 Tilden Street, and one is 1419 Shakespeare Avenue. And those are kind of our hubs, our center base, where people can come in any day for open access admission. But we also have, and as sort of the extension of those clinic services, we have about 30 embedded school-based clinics. And then you can always kind of call our hub and say, hey, is my child located and you and definitely also call a school to say, what mental health services do you have available? Because if it's not a clinic from us, you may find that a hospital-based mental health clinic or another agency's clinic might be embedded. So it's really important that people know what services their schools have to offer. And then I think for parents who are looking to see, how do I connect my kids to services and what do I want? Some people, it's really just a matter of preference. Some
I
people
see.
would rather, I want to have one-stop shopping. I want to get all my services in one place in the school, and I think it's going to be less disruptive for my child to get those services in the school. And those can be, through school systems or other providers kind of coming in. Not all schools have that service option, so it's really important to know what services
Well,
then can exist outside of school
let's.
settings.
What schools use you? Do the public schools, the private, the Catholic schools, yeshivas? Who uses your service? How widespread are you, and who's eligible for access to you?
that's a great question. It's mostly been the public school system. We've
Good.
explored partnerships with both Catholic schools and charter schools, which charter schools charter schools and Catholic schools, some do make use of those embedded services, and I do know of yeshivas as well that have embedded agencies working with them too. So sometimes within those kinds of specialized school settings, there are definitely treatment options.
This is so important. I can't tell you. You know how much less, perhaps, than let's say my generation or even yours. Does the stigma of talking to a counselor or a psychiatrist or a psychologist, now certainly 6-year-olds don't worry about it, but 16 and 17-year-olds do. Does it still have a stigma that it used to have? And one of the reasons, full disclosure, I made it my life's work. Well, one of the offshoots of what I do now, I suffered from very serious depression and anxiety in my 20s, but the signs were all there since I was a little kid, and there was a real early episode, 17, that intervention might have helped, but I didn't tell anybody. And so now I made it my business to just fully disclose, but so that people know that help works. I mean, a shrink saved my life. So so full disclosure, it's out there. I want to get the stigma out of it. How are these kids dealing with it?
Well, thank you for sharing that. First of all, I think it's very important for people to hear, and I think that's there are probably thousands of people listening who would agree and have had similar
Oh yeah,
histories where finally getting that help and getting that connection has made such a difference in their lives. I think that there are going to be still stigma issues out there. They are sometimes I think we have to be culturally sensitive when it comes to that as well.
of course, yeah.
There's certainly sometimes it's people have grown up in, whether it be just a community norm or a family norm, that no, that's not something we do, or we're going to solve everything in house. And I think that the important thing there is to know that it's real. And what I also say to a lot of people is, look, everybody out there has experienced anxiety. Everybody out there has experienced sadness and depression of some level. So I just think about it as if you got stuck there and you really couldn't on your own kind of get yourself unstuck. And then it was beginning to affect, your ability to function in school or function at work or
sure.
be the family member that you want to be. And that's why it's so important to get help. And we know that, it's prevalent. We know that 1 in 5 people are going to be dealing with some significant issue in their life. And we also know that a lot of these problems present in children and in early childhood. And the most important thing is the earlier you get help and the more that we don't let these patterns.
Oh God, yes. Sorry, I
Yeah,
just had to react
the
to
more,
that. Go ahead.
yeah,
Sorry,
the
doctor.
more, when you don't let these become ingrained patterns and you can address them early, not to say that getting help later isn't still going to be helpful and important, but you can even really change people's trajectory by getting help early and when this is. So, look, stigma is real for everyone. I mean, and I think, and I know we're going to talk about COVID in a little, but I was going to say that one of the things that's really interesting and exciting is if the thing that's been holding some people back from getting services is walking in a clinic or having to be there in a waiting room or anything else, well, guess what? Now you don't have to do that.
Yeah, it's
Now
great.
you can make a call and everything, and you have more options and more flexibility.
Well, do you know why too? Why I encourage people to seek the right help. There are certain stages of depression, and depending on how it presents, and anxiety, and particularly when you're younger, where you're so searching for an answer that you grasp the wrong things. Now, the typical wrong thing is drugs, but sometimes it's a self-help book, especially if you're suggestive. Other times it's a priest or a rabbi, God bless them, if they're not properly trained, telling somebody, and this is with all due respect, to go home and pray when they want to kill themselves isn't the answer. Or they're stuck over a guilt of something they did 20 years ago and they're obsessing and agitated. They need to talk to a professional, and that's why I'm so encouraging people to use the services that you provide. And those services are, we were talking with Dr. Todd Carlin, and he is with, now I keep missing the last syllable. Is it asked or Aston, the name of the group?
Astor, ASTOR,
Oh, okay,
Services for
got it.
Children and Families.
Okay, because I had a little
Yeah.
trouble printing out something on my computer last night. Okay, it's Astor, and we'll save plenty of time to give out the particulars. So we know what you do, we know it's available, and we know if you're worried about a stigma, you're there, and we're encouraging people use the services, folks, please. And please, when I tell you, and one more bit of full disclosure, the reason I really insist on this is when I was going down, and you understand these things, down the downslope, and I was trying to self-help myself, I kept, there was, and people see me now and the way I am now, and this can't possibly be, but I once spent 4 hours reading the same sentence in a self-help book, thinking it would say something
Mm.
different, and then naturally, if it was written in an indicting way, I was convinced that yes, I'm that miserable human being that they're talking about, getting into the woods and the shoulds, if you will, doctor. At any rate,
Mm-hmm.
let's move on now. I'm imagining trying to be 6 or 10 or 11 or even 16, and like I have this thing that it was written in by CNN and they put it out this morning. One little kid calls it the death virus. Am I going to die if I walk out the door? What are you worried about? What do you think children are going through with COVID?
I think it's certainly been a confusing time, and I think when it's literally been for both children and adults, the world's turned upside down. I think you were comparing before about all these different crises that people have we've experienced as a country and a community and as a world over the past 40, 50 years, and what's different about this and why is it having such an impact, and why are we so concerned about the mental health issues of people going forward? And there's a few reasons, I think. You mentioned yourself, it undercuts people's sense of personal safety. And at the same time, while people are worrying at that, they're also having all of these effects on their concrete needs. It's had such an economic effect as well. So when your safety and your concerns about being able to kind of make sure that all of your daily needs are getting met at the same time, that's a lot of blows that people are dealing with at once. And I think the fact that some traumas can be terrible and horrible, and the most violent things we can imagine, but they can also be discrete, where right after them we can begin to talk about healing, and we can see an end in sight, and we know what people's path are, and they're not still in it. People right now are kind of swimming in it, and it's been going on for a long time, and that exposure to chronic stress over a long period of time can have some significant effects that it can even be more detrimental to than the sudden discrete violent traumas. And compound that with the disruption of daily routines, all the stressors of remote schooling, remote work, trying to make sure that needs are identified. There's been a lot that's happened at once, and I think that's why things have built up so much, and why there's so much concern about making sure that we're identifying and linking people to the mental health needs that they have.
Would I be wrong in even worrying about the fact feeling trapped? Most, kids aren't as free as we used to be, running around. You play stickball all day, and mom calling you in for dinner or whatever it was. But still, the sense of feeling trapped, that there's danger outside the front door. I'm worried for kids in that level, that they're gonna feel trapped by that in a way that's not healthy.
Yeah, and I think that's where you talked about how kids might be getting things from the media or seeing things, and why it's so important that adults are comfortable in broaching those topics. And I think that's, first of all, that is the most important thing, and that talking to your kids, first of it's, if nothing else, saying that you're okay having the conversation. If you as the adult or as the parent aren't comfortable in having that conversation, or aren't really talking to your kids about it, and certainly in a developmentally appropriate way, kids will imagine it's worse than it is, because they're going to take that, like you said, they could take that little piece of information and run with it, and then the fantasies that come about can be so much worse than the actual reality. So, being able to kind of dispel those inaccuracies. The other thing is, sometimes we all need a break from COVID. Sometimes we just need to turn the TV off, the news off. It can be, even really grounded news reports can still be very sensationalistic. they're trying to get you to watch, and they're giving you a lot of
Hey,
information,
doctor.
and they're using.
Doctor, let me, this will be a good comparison for you. I'm 70 years old. I've been covering hard news for 20 years, and I'm not I'm not very driven now at this stage of my life for someone who had a problem with it. But I got to tell you,
Uh-huh.
the political news that I have to do in the last few years has left me depressed at night enough to not even want to look at the news at night. I can't imagine what it does to a kid when it has to do with their safety. To wit, how common is hypochondria today? And for kids who may have that issue now, how can you advise their parents to deal with it with them? Because I remember as a kid, I was a hypochondriac. It was one of the precursors to what happened to me later. And I'm worried
Hmm.
about kids thinking that, oh my God, I can't touch a glass. They're going to become germ phone. I mean, is this
Right.
something your community is worried about in your profession?
I think the range of anxiety disorders is certainly something we are worried about. And I think, like you're saying, developing health anxiety related to specific maybe phobias or anything related to this is something that you can certainly imagine. I
Yeah.
think that's where, I think that for, the prevention of this, obviously, is
Yeah.
factual information and everything. And to focus on, and when a lot of things are out of control, it's really important to focus on what you can control. So I think, to speak to that point of reassuring kids about their safety and everything is like, we know what's going to keep us safe. We know what's going to decrease the likelihood of anyone in our family getting sick. We know that social distancing, washing hands, we're going to wear that mask and everything.
Hmm.
And again, and kids also will pick up on your stress and your anxiety level, which,
I
that's
was
why
just
we talk,
thinking
that's
about
why
that.
that
Hmm.
yeah, if you can sort of, and that's why parents have to be able to have that time to do their own self care and take care of themselves. Because if they're free flowing with anxiety, that anxiety is going to flow right into them. Kids are
Hmm.
going to see that and think that there's something that they need to be scared about as well. So we all have to take care of ourselves because it's natural for parents to be feeling some anxiety too. So we want to make sure that everybody is getting the help they need, and then being able to communicate just on what we're doing to reassure that we have things that we know we can do to stay safe. That even these stay-at-home measures and all these things that we don't like or that are impacting being able to be with our friends, do the things we want to do. There are things we're doing because we know that's what's going to keep us healthy, and that we're confident that we are going to be healthy by doing it. And so young kids need to know that the adults are doing things that are keeping them safe and keeping them free from
and, and
harm.
and
And
acting
that's about the
calm
most.
and acting calm in front of them. I just want to be said again. Sorry to step on your words. So we're
Exactly.
talking with Dr. Todd Carlin from Astor, a group that provides psychological and mental health services to children and families, and they're in many schools. They have walk-in clinics. Doctor, what's different in managing these kinds of issues with children because of the level that they're at? I know in adults, there's all kinds of therapies, cognitive therapy, the goal obviously to increase insight and develop self-confidence. But kids may not be that sophisticated to even understand what insight is. But just what are you trying to achieve with a child as opposed to an adult?
A lot of the techniques and methods are similar, actually. I mean, I think like you said, it depends on the cognitive level of the kids. But I think even once kids get to be, 6, 7, 8, they
Yeah,
can
that's
really
good.
actively participate in their
Good.
treatment, and they kind of know that there's stuff going on that's bothering them, and they can be goal focused. I think parental involvement in treatment is so important
Hmm.
because it doesn't matter what you do in an office if you're not practicing those skills at home or in the community or in the classroom or figuring out a way to generalize outside of whatever you're doing in the office, things aren't going to get better. So we need parents who really are the best. First of all, they know their kids better than any therapist is
Of
ever going to
course.
get to know them.
Hmm.
So they are not only such an important resource for information, but we need them to be partners in whatever treatment they have. You can do different kinds of more behavioral things with kids, maybe that are, depending on their age. And then as they scale up to certainly young adolescents and adolescents, a lot of the treatments and applications of things that really work well in the adult population are also things that kids that age can participate in as well, because they really have to own their own treatment, and they really
Yeah.
have to it's, as you know more, therapy is not something that's done to you. It's something that you are doing
Oh yeah.
yourself.
Hmm.
You're just learning new skills and things that can support you in different situations.
It's done well. It does so many wonderful things for people. I just want to distill a couple of things to the top right now. As a professional in this kind of healthcare, what are you most worried about for our children during COVID?
I think the most thing I'm worried about is that we have a community that certainly is in the middle of such a traumatic event, and we know that there are going to be a lot of undiscovered needs,
Hmm.
that right now may be kind of below the surface because we know that there is trauma, there is loss, there's anxiety, there's depression, and we know that when people are home, some people are going to be seeking help, but we know a lot of people aren't. And I actually do believe that when executive orders are lifted and people are beginning to, right now it's wonderful that parents are home and can supervise, but that's not going to also, last forever. And I think we really need to get out there and make sure that we are kind of screening and getting in touch with families to make sure that we're kind of addressing what the parenting stress level is, what kids have experienced and what they're going through, so that we don't want kids to wait to fail. We don't want problems to be November and they're back in school and all of a sudden they're failing or they're refusing to go to school or there's those other anxieties or there's chronic absenteeism before we can begin to get services in place.
Makes sense, doctor.
So we really want to try to be.
Apropos of that, I just wanted to get something else in. Um, you've really just given a great presentation of what's available, what can be done, what kinds of issues you deal with. And some people may be listening, and I want to talk to them now. Is this that because people can't aren't going to the doctors one on one, I'd like you to reiterate for people that you can teleconference your help now. You mentioned it earlier, but I'm imagining, this is kind of like the call for action. There are probably some people out there that say, boy, I really need these services for my child or need to talk to someone about my child, but they don't have to come in person. Tell them how they do that.
Sure. You can access for our services. We have a hotline that's 866 Aster 01.
Give it again.
We put that in place so that 866 Aster 01,
Mm-hmm.
and that's there so that people can be linked to a provider in their area, and again set people up for a screening and assessment, often within the same day. You mentioned the fact that right now the state and the federal government have allowed for people to access services in any flexible way that they can. So we are doing video, we are doing phone. We transformed our whole staff, who've done an amazing job converting their own home areas into home offices and serving kids. And we've done over 20,000 telehealth sessions in the last since this crisis has began.
Wonderful.
And again, we have kind of our standard operating video platform, but we also know that people have particular preferences, technology challenges, or anything, and we do it in whatever way that people are most comfortable with and most comfortable accessing services. The biggest thing is to make sure that people can get connected if they need it, and those services are offered in English and Spanish.
That's just great to hear. Now I'm going to ask you, and we can take a little time doing it. I saved a few minutes at the end for you to go over the specifics, the phone number again, the website, how people can get at you, the address, and so forth. Before I do, it just you probably can tell, but your organization is welcome anytime you need to get the word out, and if you should need I mean, I do this, but of course, it would be pro bono. You ever need somebody to MC a fundraiser, or you're doing anything to help people with mental illnesses, you can count on me to be involved in some way. So, you all have my
Thank
information.
you so much for
Please,
that.
yeah, I can't tell you how much I
No,
care about it. It's off the grid, and that's why I talk about it openly. It was one of the most difficult things that I've ever been through in my life, and I was helped, and the biggest issue is to be open about it. So I'm available for
mhm.
anything like that. Now, push my strange face to the side. Let's talk about information. The number again, the hotline, the general business line, where they can find you, where your clinic's on. Let's take a few minutes to get it all out the way you want to get out, and then any other message that you wanted people to get that I might not have asked you.
Sure.
Let's cover that too, please.
So the website, which I haven't given yet, is www.astorservices, ASTOR services, all one word, .org. That's a great place. You can go also to find out the particulars, like you said, how the services break down across our clinics, all of the locations, and age groups and particulars of how we serve. And through the website, you can also click on links so that you can send an email to either a general web email or an email specifically to a program lead of a particular service you're interested in or getting more information out about. And you can call 866-ASTOR-01 and then just tell them.
Always give the phone number twice. I'm sorry, doctor. What happens is they grab for the pen. Yeah. They grab for the pen, and then what did he say? Go ahead, doctor. I'm sorry.
866-ASTOR-01.
Okay, continue, please, with your information that you're providing.
And that's where you can basically say, hey, this is what I'm looking for. This is what I'm concerned about. Or this is what I'm worried about. What kinds, could you set me up for a referral? Or where would I go and get this kind of assistance? Even if you're not sure exactly what your question is just yet, you can certainly give them a call. And certainly find out what we have to offer. And if it's not something, obviously, if it's not something that is in our ballpark, or we have another idea of who can help you, we'll point you in the right direction.
Well, I've got to tell you, doctor, this has been wonderful. I'm sure you're going to help a lot of people. I hope you're staying safe yourself, you and your family. And this was really enlightening today. I'm sure you know this, but you're going to help a lot of people. And a lot of people are going to need your services right now. Thank you so much for being with us today. Anything else you want to add?
Just that I hope everybody's out there and be safe, and certainly that we, to access the help you need. And I just want to thank you so much for helping get the word out.
Well, we will continue to do that. It comes up again. You need something. You've got a fundraiser. You want people to go there. Call me and we'll get it out on the air. Thank you very much. Thank you, Dr. Tom. Okay, Todd Carling. I can't read my own writing anymore. Thank you so much, doctor. All right, we're going to do a reset. It is 9 o'clock. We have a new show coming up after I say goodbye. Actually, it's the third of the Return of Politics in Your Health, starring Dr. Victor Sternberg, and we'll be announcing it'll be moving to a different hour during the day. Not so much later that you won't be able to link it. But Dr. Victor Sternberg, as you know, is a periodontist by trade, but more importantly, he's a healer in terms of prevention and, more importantly, how politics of the health affects, politics of this country affects your health. So let's move on. I want to thank our sponsors, first of all, Aging Issues Management, the law firm of Payne & Kahn, the Beachmont Tavern, pluginvirtualreality.com, and of course our friends at United Hebrew of New Rochelle. And thus, we will share with you now our weather report. It is 58 or 60 already, going up to 81. It's warm here in my little makeshift studio. It's cloudy. It's going to be mostly cloudy today. Late day thunderstorm, but late day. You should have a nice afternoon into the early evening. A temperature dropping down to 61 tonight while we have some scattered thunderstorms. But tomorrow, a gem of a day. Mostly sunny skies. The high will be 75. The overnight will be 52. And on Sunday, mixture sun and clouds with late day showers. The high will be 63 degrees, the overnight low 51. And our guests today, I owe an apology to one, Jake Schaefer. I screwed up his schedule. Jake, hey, we'll talk to you later. Good man. Vince Russo, thank you. Carlos Cuevas, the attorney, thank you very much. We talked with him about, I'm looking at the number here, about bankruptcies and unemployment and everything else. 36 million now people are out of work. Al Tarantino could not make it today at 8:20. Dr. Todd Carling. And again, coming up in just a few minutes, we'll talk with Dr. Victor Sternberg. Actually, he will talk with you. It's his show. I only direct the traffic. This is Radio Westchester Mornings with Bob Marrone. As I said, we will not be back with you on Monday, where the morning show is going to. We have to take a hiatus to take care of some of these COVID-related things, but we will still be broadcasting and doing other things during this time. We'll make some announcements to it. But we will go now to one of the shows that will continue to be broadcast, and that's Politics in Your House, starring Dr. Victor Sternberg. Stay right there. Just a reminder, folks, remember when you go out, things are going to be loosening up in terms of parks. They're not ready to do restaurants yet, but please remember to keep some masks and gloves on. You know, if you go get gas, they won't even give you gas if you don't have a face mask on. And if you're out shopping in the grocery store, whatever it is, the hardware store, you probably should be wearing gloves too. But now remember, the gloves pick up the virus. They keep it off your hands. So don't go touching your face when you have the gloves on. Don't go touching your eyes. And when you get home, take off the gloves and throw them away. And if they're the really sturdier type, and some people wear them and you're going to wear them again, you need to take your disinfectant and disinfect the gloves the same way you would do your hands. Take them off and then wash your hands. And from everything I read and have been told by the professionals, you should be fine. All righty, we're getting ready for Dr. Sternberg. I'm just going to bring him on in and we'll start that show.
Yes.
I'm sure you're there. We'll go. We're fine. We're going to start up now.
Hello.
We're going to start up now, Doctor. All righty, ladies and gentlemen, good morning. It is time for Politics and Your Health, starring Dr. Victor Sternberg. Dr. Sternberg is a periodontist by trade, but he is committed to the prevention of disease in his practice, but also in terms of his radio career, covers all issues of medicine and prevention, but most especially how the politics of this great nation and even the world affects your health. Now, Dr. Sternberg um, is, well, to say the least, he's been very successful on the radio now over several stations for almost a decade. And please welcome him, the host of Politics in Your Health, Dr. Victor Sternberg. Good morning, sir. Good morning.
Hello.
Good morning, doctor.
I don't think this is the doctor. This is Vince Malfitano.
Oh, Vince. Oh, I picked you up. Vince, I'm so glad you called, but we just started another show, so can I call you back?
Yeah.
How wonderful.
Yes. I've been trying to get through. It's not easy sometimes.
No, because
but
we had a full no, that's okay. I got to find out what went wrong. I think I got to call the doctor. Thank you, sir. All righty, the doctor's calling again. Folks, this is coming to you live. Hi, Doc. Maybe I should call you. There seems to be a problem. But somebody, you know what? Somebody just jumped on and I thought it was you. So, all righty. I'm going to call you on this line. So hang up. Thanks. Welcome to Real Radio, folks.
Good morning.
Good morning, doctor. I already did the setup, and I don't know if you heard it, if you were listening. I already brought you on, and then what happened was a previous caller who had the hotline number had called a few minutes ahead of you, and so you guys clashed. Very rare that that happens, but nonetheless, no harm done. And as I said, folks, to you, Dr. Sternberg, now almost a decade of one of the more popular talk show hosts in local radio. His program, Politics in Your Health, returning now for a third week. Doctor, good morning. There's so much to talk about. I don't know where to begin, but I'm going to let you now, as you move into your, I guess, almost seventh year of doing this. What's on your mind this morning to open things up? You know, I always have plenty for you.
You know, there are two tracks. One is the more macro world of there's so many moving parts politically, economically. And then comes down to my personal world. And I'm going to start with that because that's a good place for me to start. And then we'll get into the macro world. So there's 1.4 million healthcare workers who are currently unemployed. Many of them worked in doctors' offices that were not doing elective procedures. They were doing telemedicine. 500,000 of those people work in the dental profession are unemployed, including my staff. And as we begin to think about going back to work, as I mentioned before, there are some very unique issues about dentistry and the virus. And that has to do with the proximity of the dentist to the patient's mouth and nasal cavity. In Italy, the highest rate of infection was among dentists of all professions, and 7 dentists died in Italy. When this disease began, they weren't using all of the masks and other things we were using today, and the infection rate was off the charts. And in Italy, they also lost. Can you hear me? They also
Absolutely.
lost. They also lost over 50 physicians treating patients with the virus because of my concerns about my staff being exposed, and because my patients' concerns are about themselves becoming ill in a dental office. I've spent tens of thousands of dollars already to buy some equipment that's going to make the room free of virus, including a fogging device that they use, a similar device that we use to kill mosquitoes by spraying them. They have a device like that that can spray something called hydrochloric acid, a low, a mediocre acid, but very effective in killing viruses. And we're going to start spraying it into the rooms when a patient leaves, because the virus, as you read recently, sticks around even when you speak. For up to 8 minutes after you speak, there's virus in the air. So my particular situation is unique, but it's a microcosm, because here is the issue. My employees are very nervous because one of them almost died prior to us closing the office. They are very concerned about being exposed to patients. My patients are concerned about them getting exposed and avoiding, so they may want to avoid dental care. And so this little industry of mine is in the crosshairs of how to approach opening our practices. The governor has not given us a go-ahead in Westchester County or New York City, which have higher instances than upstate New York. But it is, so let's look at some of the issues. Number one is, what's going to happen in my practice? Will people come back and the numbers that I could support my staff in my practice? Number one. Number two, will my employees be able to work full time? Will there be enough people for them to take care of? Number three, the expense that I'm incurring to run this practice is far in excess of what I had before due to the equipment I'm buying. Do I pass that cost on to my patients? Do I eat it? And then take somebody who has got loads of debt, who just got out of school and is trying to earn a living as a dentist. So the ramifications of this virus in terms of the economics of the healthcare profession are not minor. And so, and then I feel myself somewhat in the crosshairs. I've tried to do what's right for the patient, what's right for the staff, and do it in a way that I can continue to pay my bills and pay my rent and all the other things I have to deal with. So this is an example of a small business that's uniquely impacted by anxiety and concern.
And in fact, doctor, I can think of no other business right now, save for someone who's intubating a patient where the lung pushes back out and you get a small aerosol. Aerosol's your business every time you drill.
That's right.
There's a part of me, and I'm just doing this to juxtapose, because we spoke a little bit about this the other night. Over the years, you and I've become very friendly. You're one of my favorite people on the planet. And I'm almost tempted to want to say, you know what? Don't spend tens of thousands of dollars. Put everybody on unemployment for 6 months and just close down until they get a virus. Because, not for nothing, just kind of like in a morning show, you're the star of the show. Every patient sees you. I mean, some see the hygienist, some, get but at the end of the
I
day,
check them all.
you're there the statistical increase of exposure to the virus for you is off the charts.
3 of my colleagues have been deathly ill with this virus
Yes.
already, and there are real moving concerns here that I have. And although I tend to be optimistic, I also realize that there are things out of my control.
Yeah.
And I'm committed to my profession. My patients do need, I provide a service I think that's valuable, and yet the logistics are very complicated, Bob. And I
know.
just want to share with you that
Go ahead.
I would almost wait for the governor to give us a little more time before we open up, so there's more of a precipitous drop in the number of cases. That being said, I recently got tested for antibodies because I've been exposed to my secretary, and I went down to Tarrytown and I got the test in the same day. One of the only ways out of the conundrum that I can see is not all the precautions I do in the office, because we're playing Russian roulette in what we do, but it seems to be that my staff should be tested regularly, at least once a week. And my patients, I'm writing a letter to them because I want them to realize that I'm concerned about these issues emotionally for them. I think that if we all get tested, if testing becomes like going into CVS to buy a pill, you get tested on a regular basis. If we can test the people who come to me and my staff gets tested regularly, we at least can minimize the possibility of somebody who is positive but asymptomatic coming into my office and affecting other patients or my staff.
And the question is, how often should you do this? As we all know,
Yeah.
the test doesn't say who that person met if they're positive in the last 3
That's right.
days. Uh,
We have a real conundrum, Bob.
B, it's only as
Even
good
that,
as the moment you got that test back, or the moment you took it, I should say. Well, theoretically, I can go get a test right now and then go have lunch, theoretically, of course, with someone who's virus plenty, and I'm doomed, well, so to speak. In
no,
fact,
no, I
I
get it,
want to
Bob.
segue into testing in a moment, but I want you to, I really want people to see the conundrum that you're in, because it's typical of 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 why many people get angry, and that includes me, about people who try to minimize what this is. You don't have this
But,
problem when someone
it's,
can do with the flu. You don't have to buy tens
right,
of thousands. Go ahead.
it's interesting you said that, Bob, because it brings up a conversation I had with a former employee of mine, a very bright woman, who we were discussing one of the people we know who died of the virus, a dentist who passed away. And in the course of the conversation, she basically went to the place that shocked the hell out of me. She said, "This will be looked on as one of the great hoaxes in the history of the world." Okay, now that blew me away. I was taken aback by her statements, and I said to myself, I'm not going to win an argument with her, but the fact that an intelligent woman feels this way, that somehow this is just a reflection of a perhaps Democratic Party trying to bring down the president and destroy the economy so they can elect another Democrat.
So
That there are beliefs like that among
it's
intelligent people.
frightening. Do you know that as you know, I'm sure that India right now is burning up, if you will, because of the virus. It's Russia's got doctors that are dying. Evidently, they're not taking care of themselves very well. But yeah, I'm very
Yeah,
concerned about that. But I don't want to get in the way of where you want to take the program. But I did at some
yeah.
point. I'm very concerned, and I'm not being at all political. I want to be clinical with this, and you can be the political one. Um, the president's saying he thinks testing is overrated, but is not testing the gold standard to come up with, in any kind of a virus, what the incidences and likelihood of herd immunity is? Isn't it one of the main things? I mean, should he be dismissing it like this?
One of the things you do if you have a modicum of intelligence, you look at what other people have done and what the outcomes have been. I once said to you, Bob, I once asked somebody who the smartest person was, and he said the person that learns from everybody else is going to be the smartest person. Two countries come to mind. In Taiwan, there are 24 million people. As soon as they heard about what was happening in China, they began testing every person who came from China on a plane, and they began looking and searching, doing all this searches for contacts, and they began testing everybody. They have not had a case in China since April the 12th. They had 410 cases and 7 deaths in a country of 24 million people. New Zealand did the similar kind of approach, and they've only had 20 deaths and no cases reported recently. So here are two countries that took a very different approach and had a markedly different outcome than any country in the world. And on the other hand, those who would minimize this problem should realize the following. You don't have to look at people that you tested who died of the virus. You have to look at the increase in death rate in comparative periods. In England, the death rate for this period compared to last year is 67% higher. In Italy, it was 50% higher. So that death rate is more of a measure of the virility of this virus than any other political views that this is just the flu. Interesting enough, comparing the flu season in the
It
United
shouldn't,
States.
excuse me, doctor, I have to react to that. I mean, this isn't at you. It shouldn't be. It's not a political view, it's a scientific fact. As far as I
Yeah, but this
know,
is
the flu only rarely creates the cytokine thing that's killing people. It rarely creates Kawasaki disease. And now one hospital is reporting that one third of its cases are leaving with kidney failure.
yeah. So interesting enough, someone did a study of flu deaths during the flu season last year, and they compared a week of April 14th to 21st in the United States last year, and there were 750 deaths recorded from the flu for that week, that period. In the same period this year, there were 14,000 deaths. This indicated that this virus is 20 times more lethal than is the flu. And these are statistics that you can't, those who want to get political about this thing being just a overly cautious attempt to perhaps hurt the economy, just look at the death rates around the world and tell me, is it about Donald Trump in Italy, the Netherlands, Sweden, Taiwan? Why are the differences? Explain to me why they don't have a political issue with this disease, but we do.
I
How did
understand,
we?
and I do realize that because of the way our system is set up, that there are Democrats, to be fair, that are going to try and make hay with the fact that errors were made early and overstate them to hurt him politically. But that's just political life. I don't like that the politics is getting in the way of the proper treatment. I am That's the appalling part.
Yeah, somehow we've crossed the Rubicon and we now have done something that is, to me, a disaster for a culture. There was a very interesting book written by Johnson about different civilizations that survived and those that did not persevere. And he found that in the cases of long surviving civilizations, there were two characteristics that they had. One was they followed a Judeo-Christian ethic of the value of human life. And the second was science was worshipped. It was not discounted. And if you look at some of the autocrats and dictators we've had, go running from Hitler to who used this kind of pseudoscience about the superior race,
Yeah, and phrenology and
Stalin,
all of that. Yep.
right? Stalin, who killed the
Eugenics.
intellectuals because they were a threat to him. Mao Zedong, who took all the intellectuals and made them into physical laborers because he felt they were a threat. And even Xi in China, who that they arrested the doctor who blew the whistle. So you can see that there is this history of autocrats taking science and evidence and killing the messenger that would threaten their power in office. And I think to a great degree that's going on here that never happened before in our country. It's becoming acceptable to downgrade, attack Dr. Fauci or fire the whistleblower or demean those who say that we have a real threat about
A
opening
lot of
schools.
it's plainly obvious. I mean, I listen to Fauci. Lately I've been watching too much of this stuff. It's going to drive me crazy. But I watched Fauci's testimony, and his message was, if you don't follow the president's directives, you're going to be in trouble. And then the president criticizes his performance. That is not logical. It's not even logical, much less wrong. And
Well, it gets back. It's the danger, Bob, of using of politics trumping science, and trumping is a good word here. Politics trumping science and medicine. This is serious deviation from a
Well,
rational society.
doctor, help people understand something, because you are a man of science. You are a doctor. Testing. No, I want to take a step back. What bothers me here is, for political reasons, everyone I talk to, every doctor I get on the phone, every show prep I do, I think I told you off air, I watched this thing
Right.
at 2:30 in the morning because General Mattis and the top general in Europe and a third general, they were all on C-SPAN talking about the need to have a central, coordinated, so that all the information is reposited in one place, a central approach to this. Why won't the president or why won't the federal government do it? Help
You
us.
know, it's an interesting dichotomy. You know, the the Republicans, their essential mission, their political view. Let's not talk about Donald Trump. Is that each state should do what it wants to do. They don't believe the federal government should control life in America, and therefore we believe in a federal system of 50 states making decisions, and
No, but
God
this is,
forbid the federal government.
I'm cutting you off only because this was the point of even
Yeah,
Mattis, and you know how well respected he is.
yeah.
But this is a war, and a war can't be fought by the individual states. We can't have, if we're at war, if we were at war with China tomorrow, Virginia can't say, I'm not sending them anybody, or I'm buying the guns and I'm going to outbid New York for the guns. What wars are fought by the federal government, and this is a war.
Yeah, well, this particular administration is more concerned, unfortunately, about the supporters and their views and the election than they are about exerting pressure on the nation. Because when you do that, when you take a stand, that's going to be we, the American people, are going to insist, or the government's going to insist that a certain kind of behavior be followed. You're going to get
Yeah,
pushback,
but you know
and
what?
that pushback's going
What
to come.
bothers me is with a little hard work, this could be rationalized. I mean, some states clearly can open up pretty soon. What I'm saying, the idea of a coordinated plan means that you're really sussing it out. You're sussing it out. You're being cerebral and planned. You can do this in this state. You can do that in that state. You work with the governors, but you need that common, because there are no borders in a country like ours in that way. People are crossing state lines. They're driving over New Jersey. They're driving down to Kentucky. It has to be coordinated on a national level. It's insane not to. And now, having said that, I need to go back to this because I think it's going to come up in the next few days, and hopefully you can help people with this. Why is testing so important? I just need to disabuse. And again, doctor, this is your show, but I just got to tee this up for you. People need to be disabused that testing isn't important of that notion.
Well, let's take an example of what happened in the White House. Okay, if we didn't test all of the president's employees or people that come into the White House, you're going to have people walking into the White House who have the virus that may be asymptomatic, like Mr. Miller's wife or the valet, perhaps, of the president. And that individual who has not been tested is going to expose, let's take it at the highest level, the president and vice president of the United States. If I don't have my employees tested, because whatever reason I don't believe it's necessary, then what's going to happen is my employee is going to walk into the office and infect another employee who might infect the patient. So why is it important? It's because I'm going to come in contact with other people, and it's important that I know and they know and the community know who is negative and who's positive. So it reduces enormously the risk of having people that are positive exposing others. It's common sense. We saw with the measles, where people didn't want to get the measles inoculation. What happened in certain communities? The measles ran wild because people didn't want to. If you don't vaccinate, then you're going to have more disease, and those people are going to infect other people. So testing is critical to know that let me personalize it. If I don't get tested and I have the virus and I walk into the office, I got Mrs. Jones in my dental chair, and whatever reason my mask is leaking or whatever, I can infect the person, or I can infect my secretary who'll go infect her child. So it's the only way. It's the only way we can begin to have people who are positive not exposing other people who are not who have not had the virus.
And doctor,
So
not to mention that you've got to go home to your wife and son. It is 9:32. You're listening to Politics in Your Health, starring Victor Sternberg here on Radio Westchester. Doctor, I had a couple of other items, and then I want to open it wide open for yourself. We're seeing now this so-called Kawasaki. They're calling it an inflammatory illness. It's now it's up to 100 children. We're seeing this kidney disease. We're also seeing now all kinds of other where this virus seems to be attacking all kinds of things. all kinds of parts of the body. What do you make of it?
We have a disease caused by a particular virus that we've never had before. It is obviously capable of causing why the inflammation in the body is so severe that it attacks other organs, not just the lungs. And the Kawasaki, which is interesting because my son many years ago, when he was a little boy, had this from a virus, and thank God it went away a couple of days on steroids. It wasn't as serious as these children. What we're doing is we're discovering that we have an enemy. And we thought the enemy only affected one part of our lungs and somehow it would go away. The enemy is got many weapons. And this, as we're speaking, Bob, every day we're rewriting the story of what this virus can do to us. And in fact, we're still concerned. I have a secretary who's now 2 months from diagnosis to today, and she is still not feeling well. The doctor told her to stay home further. And there's a concern about her pulmonary capacity going forward because she had permanent lung damage, which will make her susceptible to other diseases.
Mm-hmm.
So, Bob, this is when it's all said and done, and they put it in the textbooks, there'll be a whole list of things that this virus does that other viruses did not do to human beings.
And what about, if I may, Doctor, another item on my little list here? All of a sudden, it's causing blood clots.
Yes. You know about that quote, that poor fellow
The
on
actor,
Broadway who
yes,
lost his leg.
yeah.
Yeah,
He's still in a
strokes.
coma.
It's also causing.
Yeah.
It seems to interfere with the blood supply to the organs. It causes severe inflammation, perhaps, of the arteries. It closes the arteries down, and the blood stops going through them. And in the brain, the same thing's happening. That's why I know of a friend of mine lost his nephew, 23 years old. He came home with a terrible headache. He was positive from his job. He had headaches for 3 days, and then he laid down and never woke up, and he died of a stroke. So we're dealing with a disease that causes this global inflammation in the body, as it does in children, or the case of the strokes, and it transcends just being a pulmonary disease. The flu primarily is a pulmonary disease, upper respiratory infection. This goes beyond it, and it's the perfect storm if you wanted to cause havoc in the world.
Anything else that you're learning, Doctor, since, you read the, if you will, we call it in this business the trades, but you read the medical journals, you talk to colleagues in the medical profession. Is there anything new? Is there any, I mean, I was surprised when Fauci said the other day that he thinks we could have, maybe not by school, but maybe by the end of the year, early in the new year, a some sort of either something that ameliorates it, mitigates it, or that it may even have a vaccine. Is there anything
Yeah.
new that you're hearing?
Yeah, I'm reading a lot about the vaccines, and I must tell you, there is real concerns. The shortest time we ever had a vaccine produced is 4 years. Many of them took longer. There is so much innate issues with vaccines working for everybody, vaccines that don't have side effects. And so I would say the vaccine is further off in the future. The evidence that there are things to ameliorate the body's response so that the patient doesn't go into this pulmonary or vascular shutdown, I think that's where the research is going. There's one drug that was developed that made people, had a result of getting people out of the hospital 4 days sooner. Obviously it has some effect. They've already started using plasma, using cured patients' blood with the antibodies, and they found it's safe in all the people they've given it to. And now that would be one of the most effective things we think we can do, will be to find antibodies, either those that are coming from other patients who've been cured, or there's work being done now abroad using synthetic antibodies that will attack the virus, but without after the patient gets sick. As soon as they show symptoms, they get a drug or a transfusion of plasma from antibodies. So I think that's going to be the approach has to be more to save lives of sick people rather than find a vaccine, because a vaccine, Bob, I believe from all the evidence, and I've listened to smart people who have been in this business for a long time, vaccines take years, but improving the symptoms of a patient will take less time. And I think that's where the research is going to make a difference, Bob. If we're going to get out of this conundrum, if this is no longer a fatal disease, it becomes a different disease.
Well, yes, doctor.
And
Are
so
you
that's what.
are you at all afraid? Sorry to step on your lines there. Are you at all afraid? Down in New Jersey, my daughter was telling me. She's a microbiologist, works in the field. She was telling me how, and actually, she actually got this off of Facebook, and it shocked her. People are starting to out others with addresses where people had COVID and telling them to stay away. Do you think we're going to have any kind of a leprosy fear? I mean, for example, do you think there are people who work with you who, quite frankly, won't want to work with your secretary? Are you
Yeah,
worried at all
well,
about that?
that's well. Look, Bob. Human beings always take issues, and there'll be a certain percentage of them that are going to make them into something it's not. The reality is, if somebody is cured of the virus and they test negative, then they're, in my opinion, no more dangerous than somebody. In fact, they're less dangerous because at least you know they're negative. They've been tested. I think we have to test all people who have been positive again until they're negative. That's another thing we should look at, because I just read about a study that came out of Korea, in which they had several hundred people who had the virus, were cured, quote, their symptoms went away, but they were still testing positive a month or two later. So there is that concern. In fact, I'm going to go visit a friend today who was tested 5 weeks ago in a rehab center, and he had the virus.
Okay.
He tested positive. He was supposed to go have his lung surgery. He has a lung lesion removed 2 weeks ago. He went to Colombia. He tested positive still. He never had symptoms. They canceled the surgery. He went last Monday. This past Monday, they tested him again. He's still positive. He's going again. And so what's happening is you have somebody who's asymptomatic, never was sick, and is still testing positive. Well, this is an issue you say the testing matter, okay? It does matter, because if this man is positive, even though he's asymptomatic, do we know he cannot shed virus? Do we know that he hasn't reached a symbiosis with his body? He's not getting sick, but he can get you sick. So I think, Bob, this idea of lepers, I get it. So a negative test is the best way to ensure that your neighbor or your friend is not going to get you sick.
Now, practical matter.
Just like
practical matter, and it does involve your practice and the practice of all doctors. How reluctant,
Absolutely.
doctor,